Chapter 361. Get in. Search the place thoroughly inside and out. Don't miss a single corner. Yes. With Lu Yun's order, the guards immediately rushed forward, intending to knock down the door of the Chu residence. When Chu Ning arrived, he happened to see this scene. Lu Yun. He immediately yelled out. How dare you? Lu Yun looked back and saw Chu Ning hurrying over with a group of people. Not only was there not the slightest trace of panic on his face, he even revealed a gloating smile. Oh, isn't this Lord Chu Ning? You're busy with government affairs. Why are you suddenly here in broad daylight? Chu Ning quickly stepped forward with a cold expression. This is my residence. Let's see who dares to barge in. When he spoke, he contained the powerful aura of a stage 5 warrior, immediately causing Lu Yun to feel a tightness in his chest. Even the guards standing at the door were fearful. They couldn't help but stop and look at each other. Lu Yun was annoyed and the smile on his face gradually faded. Lord Chu Ning, what are you doing? I'm here today on His Majesty's orders. If you really want to stop me, you're defying the orders. Chu Ning stared at him coldly. I naturally don't dare to defy His Majesty's orders. But even if you want to search, you have to give a reason, right? After all, I'm the commander of the Imperial Guards. I'm sorry, Lord Chu Ning. We're just following orders. If you really want to know the reason, why don't you find His Majesty personally? Lu Yun snorted and waved his hand. Continue. Yes. Chu Ning was about to step forward when Zhao Ming suddenly persuaded in a low voice. Lord, you must calm down. This time, they're here on His Majesty's orders. If this matter blows up, it won't do you any good. His Majesty might even think that Chu Ning was defying the orders. Chu Ning took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. All right, since that's the case, I'll see what you can find. He had never done anything wrong, so naturally he wasn't afraid of this. But why did His Majesty suddenly act like this? Lu Yun saw Chu Ning lowering his head and felt smug. During this period of time, Lu Yao had been harmed miserably by the Chu family. The worst ones were Chu Ning and Chu Luiyue. If they hadn't deliberately stirred up trouble, Lu Yao would still be in control of the Chu clan's finances. How could they have fallen to the point where they were hated by everyone? He wasn't on good terms with Lu Yao, but Lu Yao was still a member of the Lu family. Her reputation was ruined, and the Lu family was implicated as well. More importantly, she still had to go back and ask the Lu family for money to fill those holes. He was dissatisfied with Lu Yao, and even more resentful of Chu Ning and his daughter. Now that he had a chance to deal with them, he would definitely not miss it. The door was slammed open. Numerous guards swarmed in. Lu Yun flashed a provocative smile at Chu Ning, then stepped inside. Chu Ning frowned and followed closely behind. The group of people had already spread out, quickly and violently searching the courtyard and rooms. Lu Yun stood in the middle of the courtyard, hands behind his back, issuing orders without pause. That room. Go in and look for it. And the one next to him. We've searched thoroughly. Did someone go to the backyard? If you find anything out of the ordinary, report it immediately. Chu Ning was standing not far away. She clearly saw those people throwing out many things from his bedroom. Mattresses, bookshelves, clothes. Even things like tea sets, brushes, and ink were thrown on the ground outside. Many things were broken, and the floor was in a mess. Lu Yun turned around to look at Chu Ning. When he saw the latter's ugly expression, he couldn't help but move closer and persuade him proudly. Lord Chu Ning, don't be angry. This is His Majesty's decree. Instead of being angry, why don't you think about what your precious daughter has done? Chu Ning's gaze sharpened as he stared at Lu Yun. What did you say? Lu Yun shrugged nonchalantly. Chu Ning's brows furrowed even tighter. He never thought that this matter had something to do with you. What did you do for His Majesty to issue such an order? While he was thinking, he suddenly saw those people about to rush into Chu Liyue's room. How dare you? Chu Ning shouted sternly. In a flash, he appeared in front of those people. Lu Yun raised his brows. Oh, Lord Chu Ning, are you really going against His Majesty? Chu Ning's gaze swept across the crowd as he enunciated each word clearly. You can search if you want, but if you dare to damage anything in here, don't blame me for being merciless. His aura was extremely strong, and coupled with his stern voice, it made everyone fearful. Even Lu Yun couldn't help but shudder as he forced himself to speak. Didn't you hear me? Be careful. Chu Ning finally moved aside after hearing his words. Those people no longer had the excitement from before, and they walked in carefully. Chu Ning stood at the door, his gaze like a sharp blade scraping back and forth between them. Lu Yun felt very aggrieved, but he also knew that if he angered Chu Ning, he wouldn't have a good ending. Thus, he could only swallow his anger. When they found something, he would definitely ask His Majesty to punish Chu Ning severely. Chu Ning stared at these people's movements as he kept thinking about why His Majesty suddenly did this. I went to Taiyan Academy 10 days ago and hadn't been home during this period. What were they looking for here? Just as Chu Ning was puzzled, someone suddenly shouted from outside, "Master, Lord Lu." Found it. Chu Ning was shocked and immediately turned around. He saw a guard suddenly run over from the backyard and quickly rushed to Lu Yun, presenting the item in his hands. "Lord Lu, please take a look." Lu Yun picked up the hairpin and took a closer look. His expression changed, and he sneered at Chu Ning. "Lord Chu Ning, the evidence is conclusive. What else do you have to say?" Chu Ning quickly walked over. "What are you talking about?" "Lord Chu Ning, why are you acting dumb?" Lu Yun raised the hairpin in his hands and sneered. "This hairpin is the fourth princess's accessory, but it has now appeared in your backyard. Are you still going to deny it?" Chu Ning was stunned for a moment before he suddenly understood. Fourth Princess Rongzhen went missing, and His Majesty even put the Empress under house arrest because of it. Not many people knew about this, but as the Imperial Guard's commander-in-chief, he was well aware of it. And now, the missing fourth princess's accessory had been found in their house. "Are you suspecting that you hid the fourth princess?" Chu Ning blurted out. "It's not a suspicion. Now that we have evidence, it's a fact." Lu Yun put away the hairpin and looked at him mockingly. "Lord Chu Ning, please come with us." Prince Li's mansion. Rong Xiao was taking a nap on a rattan chair when Yu quickly ran over. "Your Highness, Lord Chu Ning has been arrested." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 362. Rong Xiao opened his eyes, and there seemed to be ripples in the depths of his eyes. "When did this happen?" "Just an hour ago." Lu Yun brought people to the Chu family to search and found fourth princess Rongzhen's hairpin. They confirmed that Ms. Lu Yu hid the fourth princess. As Ms. Lu Yu hasn't returned yet, they brought Lord Chu Ning away. They should be in the palace by now. Umo quickly explained the situation. He glanced at his master's expression and asked tentatively, "What's the matter?" "Master, what do you think we should do now?" Rong Xiao's thin red lips curved up into a perfect arc with some laziness. However, the corners of his eyes and brows were cold like the chill of spring. They sure know how to choose the time. Umo was dazed before he reacted. Now that Chu Luiwei isn't in the Imperial City, they'll definitely interrogate Chu Ning. In addition, they've found the so-called evidence, so they'll be even more confident. Chu Ning might suffer a lot. Now that Mu Qinghe is still in the Imperial City, even if Chu Luiwei comes back, they won't dare to do anything to him. However, they can still make Chu Luiwei suffer if they target Chu Ning. "You're saying that they're planning to take this opportunity to take revenge?" Rong Xiao lightly said. "Rong Xiao is missing. Si Meng is exposed, and the Empress is in danger. Naturally, they won't give up this opportunity." To the Empress, it wasn't important whether she could find Rong Zhen or not. The important thing was to find out who hid Rong Zhen. It was obvious that they were planning to push all the blame to Chu Luiwei. This way, part of Emperor Jiawen's anger would definitely be transferred to Chu Luiwei. Even if Chu Luiwei had Mu Qinghe's relationship and Emperor Jiawen wouldn't dare to do anything to him, it would still be beneficial for the Empress and the rest to escape punishment. Umo worriedly asked, "Why? In that case, aren't they planning to bite Ms. Luiwei and Lord Chu Ning to death?" Rong Xiao's smile turned cold. "That's why there's that hairpin." Umo sucked in a cold breath. "You're saying, A low and angry roar was suddenly heard. Umo looked up and saw a strong white lion suddenly appear in front of him. It was Xue Xue. There was a fire in its icy blue eyes. Rong Xiu glanced at it, and Xue Xue walked over and lay beside his feet. Since the Empress want to make a fuss, let's let her. Fourth princess must be lonely and scared recently. You should go and play with her later. Rong Xiu's voice was as cold and low as usual. His last syllable was slightly raised with a hint of laziness. Xue Xue of master, Xue Xue. Xue Xue licked its claws unwillingly. That Rongzhen was dirty, smelly, and only knew how to squeak. It really hated her. Unfortunately, it didn't dare to disobey its master's orders. Sigh, I miss someone so much. Thinking of this, Xue Xue lifted her head and looked at Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu glanced at it. No. Xue Xue's huge head shook and moved closer, as if trying to act cute. Rong Xiu's voice was slightly cold. She played with you for a long time last time, right? Seems like you think it's too much? Xue Xue's body stiffened. He had actually been discovered. Didn't it just let Chu Luiwei accompany it in the forest for a while? It had not seen her for a long time. Xue Xue stood up and left resentfully. Umo glanced at it and actually felt that its huge and muscular back revealed a trace of sadness. He coughed and retracted his gaze. Master, about Lord Chu Ning. Third brother doesn't seem to be doing anything recently, Rong Xiu suddenly said. Umo was dazed and nodded. His Majesty hasn't let the third prince leave the imperial city. Everyone thinks that he wants to take over the third prince's military power, so there aren't many people who interact with him. Rong Xiu picked up the book beside him and casually flipped it open. That's good too. Did the Northwest Army get in touch with him? According to your instructions, everything is going smoothly. Besides, the third prince doesn't know about this. Umo was confused as he spoke. Your Highness, aren't you worried that you're helping the third prince like this? Rong Jiu has military power in his hands. If things continue to develop, nobody knows what Rong Jiu will do. The Empress and the Crown Prince should be worried. Rong Xiu flipped open a page of the book and seemed to be unconcerned about this. Go and tell third brother about the fourth princess. Palace. Emperor Zhouwen sat at the head of the table while the Empress sat at the side. She was holding the hairpin that Lu Yun found as tears streamed down her face. This is indeed Zhen Zhen's. I gave it to her on her 13th birthday. Her nickname is engraved on it, so there's no doubt about it. Poor Zhen Zhen. I've let her down. Emperor Zhouwen stared at Chu Ning sternly. Chu Ning, what else do you have to say? Chu Ning lifted his sleeves and knelt on the floor. Your Majesty is wise. I really don't know where this hairpin came from. I also don't know where the fourth princess is now. However, I can use my life to guarantee that this has nothing to do with you. Emperor Zhouwen was also very conflicted. He knew what kind of person Chu Ning was. Since he was willing to swear, it meant that he really believed that Chu Luiwei didn't do it. But how could he explain the hairpin? Lord Chu Ning, take it that I'm begging you. Just tell His Majesty and this consort where Zhen Zhen is right now. The Empress looked at Chu Ning with tears all over her face as if she was heartbroken. As long as she's fine, I won't pursue the other matters. Chu Ning's face tensed up. Your Majesty, I won't admit to anything that I didn't do. The Empress's eyes turned, and she wiped her tears as she tried to ask. Then, is it possible that Chu Luiwei did it, but you don't know about it? Chu Ning looked at her coldly. Your Majesty, do you want me to identify my daughter as the culprit behind the kidnapping of the fourth princess? I didn't mean that. Zhen Zhen has been missing for a few days, and His Majesty and I are very worried. I don't want to think this way, but this hairpin really can't be denied. Emperor Zhouwen kept quiet for a long time before he said, That's right. Why don't we wait for Chu Luiwei to come back from Tai Yan Academy before we interrogate him together? The Empress quickly gave Rong Qi, who was at the side, a look. Rong Qi immediately said, Father, you mustn't. If Chu Luiwei really did it, then Lord Chu Ning will definitely find a way to cover it up. Why don't we lock him up first and interrogate him strictly? This way, we won't have to be afraid that Chu Luiwei won't tell the truth when he comes back. Emperor Jiawen knitted his brows. The Empress immediately scolded him. How can you treat Lord Chuning like this before the verdict is out? Rong Qi said aggrievedly, I'm doing this for Zhenzhen. Emperor Jiawen thought for a long time and finally said, Guards, lock Chuning up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 363. Your Majesty, the third prince wishes to see you. The announcement was suddenly heard. Everyone in the palace was shocked. Emperor Jiawen knitted his brows. Tell him that I'm busy and ask him to wait in the imperial study. Eunuch Min wiped the sweat off his forehead. Your Majesty, the third prince said that he must see you immediately. Emperor Jiawen's face turned even uglier as he slammed the table. He's getting more and more brazen. The matters in the past 2 days had already made him very frustrated, and he didn't expect Rongjio to join in the fun. Rongjio has always been well-behaved in the imperial city. Why is he suddenly like this? Eunuch Min shuddered and wanted to cry. Your Majesty, the third prince said that he came today because of the fourth princess? Oh? Emperor Jiawen was a little surprised as he knitted his brows. He doesn't have much contact with Zhenzhen. What happened today? At the side, the Empress's heart skipped a beat, and she felt uneasy. The last time Rongjin was grounded was because Rongjio complained to His Majesty. I wonder what he's up to today. She worriedly persuaded him. Your Majesty, we shouldn't air our dirty linen in public. It's better not to blow up Zhenzhen's disappearance, right? It's better for the royal family and Zhenzhen to investigate. If the third prince is involved, it won't be easy. Emperor Jiawen thought for a moment and shook his head. Rongjio has always been calm. Since he dares to come, he must know something. As he spoke, he raised his hand at Eunuch Min, let him in. Eunuch Min hurriedly went outside the palace and invited Rongjio in. The Empress secretly bit her lips, and for some reason, she became even more nervous. Very quickly, Rongjio walked in with big strides. He had been on the battlefield for many years. Even though he was only 20 years old and younger than Rongjin, he had a strong physique and a strong aura around him. Even though he was wearing a robe, it couldn't hide his general's murderous aura. This was the aura that one would only have after experiencing a life-and-death battle on the battlefield. Rongjio's gaze quickly swept across the palace, and it paused on the Empress especially for a moment. The Empress's heart skipped a beat as she hurriedly looked away. Your son greets Imperial Father and Imperial Mother. Rongjio stood still in the palace, cupped his fists, and bowed to Emperor Jiawen and the Empress. Emperor Jiawen didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. There's no need to be so formal. You said earlier that you knew some news about Rongzhen. Is that true? Rongjio nodded. This son requests an audience with Imperial Father today precisely because of this. Emperor Jiawen sat up straight. Rongjio's gaze landed on Chuning. When I was outside, I heard that Imperial Father was planning to imprison Lord Chuning. Emperor Jiawen was confused, but he didn't deny it. That's right. Rongjio shook his head. Imperial Father, you mustn't do this. You've wrongly accused Lord Chuning. I can confirm that Lord Chuning has nothing to do with this matter. Once she said that, not only Emperor Jiawen and the Empress, but even Chuning was shocked. Rongjio actually came to speak up for me? Chuning quickly recalled in his mind. He didn't seem to have much interaction with the third prince. At such a critical moment, anyone who gets involved will be in trouble. Others can't wait to avoid it, so why is he? Rongjio, do you know what you're saying? Emperor Jiawen's expression instantly became stern, and his voice was filled with authority. Rongjio's expression didn't change. I know. In actual fact, not only Lord Chuning, but even Chu Luiwei also has nothing to do with this matter. The Empress finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Third Prince, do you know that Lu Yun has already found Zhenzhen's hairpin in Chuning's house? The evidence is conclusive, and you can't deny it. Why are you speaking up for Chuning and his daughter like this? Rongjio revealed a meaningful smile as he looked at the Empress and slowly said, Her Majesty, did Rongjin really drop that hairpin in Lord Chuning's house? The Empress's heart skipped a beat. What did you say? I heard that Lord Lu Yun brought people to search back then, and Lord Chuning's family. Everyone knows that after severing ties with the Chu family, Lord Chuning and Chu Luiyue have been living in a new mansion. They didn't even hire any servants. During the search, only Lord Chuning was there. If someone purposely brought this hairpin over and lied about finding it there, who would discover it? Even if Lord Chuning had 3 heads and 6 arms, I'm afraid he can't keep an eye on everyone, right? Emperor Jiawen's expression changed slightly. Rongjiu's words did make sense. The Empress secretly tightened her grip on the chair's armrest. Third Prince, this hairpin was found in the backyard. Many guards at that time can testify. Could it be that they are all lying? Rongjiu paused and suddenly asked, Her Majesty, may I know if the hairpin in your hand is the one you found in Lord Chuning's house? The Empress was flustered by his words, so she nodded subconsciously when she heard him ask this. Yes, this is it. That's it. Rongjiu's expression became even more thought-provoking. This hairpin is exquisite and very eye-catching. Even if I'm standing here, I can still see it from such a distance. I wonder if Lord Chuning and Chu Luiyue are blind. That's why they couldn't see this hairpin and purposely left it in the yard. The Empress retorted in a panic. Perhaps Chu Luiyue was too flustered back then, so she didn't notice it. After all, the yard is very big. She can't see every corner. Her Majesty, you said that this hairpin was found in the backyard, and many guards saw it with their own eyes. Why are you talking about corners now? Rongjiu's nonchalant words made the Empress stop talking. The entire palace suddenly fell into dead silence. Chuning's expression turned serious. Your Majesty, I was in the front yard back then, and the guards were in the backyard. I really didn't see them find the hairpin. Emperor Jiawen stared at the Empress, and his gaze gradually turned cold. Empress, what else do you want to say? I just made a slip of the tongue. The Empress hurriedly knelt down. Your Majesty, I've been in the palace all this while and never went out. I also didn't see the scene back then, so I naturally don't know what happened. I just made a slip of the tongue. Rongjiu lightly glanced at her in a seemingly smiling manner. Her Majesty, it seems like this matter really has nothing to do with you. Of course not. Zhen is my daughter. Now that she's missing, I'm naturally the most anxious. Hatred flashed across the Empress's eyes. Now, she could tell that Rongjiu came here today to drag her down completely. She looked up and anxiously looked at Emperor Jiawen. Your Majesty, everything I said is true. Sidu Xingqian personally saw that Zhen was with Chu Luiyue before she went missing. I can testify. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 364. This sentence was no different from a sudden clap of thunder, suddenly exploding. Everyone in the hall was shocked. Even Rongjiu knitted his brows slightly. Emperor Jiawen asked in a low voice, Why are you here? Are you telling the truth? Sidu Xingqian really said that? The Empress nodded repeatedly. If you don't believe me, you can ask Sidu Xingqian. Chu Ning suddenly said, Your Majesty, where did you hear this from? Of course, Sidu Xingqian said it herself. At this point, the Empress couldn't care less and could only confess that she had been communicating with Rongjin. Sidu Xingqian told Rongjin about this, and Rongjin told her about it. I know I'm in the wrong, but Rongjin did it for Rongzhen. Your Majesty! Emperor Jiawen felt his head hurt. Things seemed to be getting more and more complicated. Everyone had their own version of the story, and what they said differed greatly. Someone must be lying, but he couldn't immediately tell. Seeing that Emperor Jiawen's expression wavered for a moment, the Empress immediately said, Don't worry. Your Majesty, Sidu Xingqian already knows about Rongzhen's disappearance. This time, she plans to come back with Rongjin to help find Rongzhen. Why don't we wait for them to come back and confront each other? Emperor Jiawen disagreed. Chu Luiyue is going to Taiyan Academy for a month, and only 1/3 of the time has passed. If we keep waiting for her, Rongzhen, Your Majesty, will be back soon. She said earlier that she would only be gone for 10 days, Chuning said. These words surprised the others. Chu Luiwei only stayed for 10 days for such a rare opportunity? Emperor Zhouwen kept quiet for a while and finally decided. Since that's the case, let's wait for them to return and ask them together. The Empress finally heaved a sigh of relief. Her body went limp and she almost fell to the ground. With Situ Xingqian as a witness, Chu Luiwei definitely can't escape this time. At that time, even if she didn't die, she would still make her lose a layer of skin. Imperial Father is wise. This way, they would definitely be able to find Rongzhen as soon as possible, and Lord Chuning wouldn't be wronged for no reason. Lord Chuning has always been loyal to you. It wouldn't be good if Lord Chuning's feelings were hurt because of some misunderstanding, said Rongjio as he cupped his fists. The hall fell silent for a moment. Everyone knew that the so-called misunderstanding was caused by the Empress. Emperor Zhouwen's gaze became much darker. All of you can leave first. The Empress stayed. Chuning walked out of the palace and thanked Rongjio solemnly. Thank you for your help this time, Third Prince. Otherwise, he might really be locked up. Rongjio looked nonchalant. Lord Chuning, there's no need to be so polite. I'm helping you because I'm helping myself. Chuning was taken aback. He did not expect Rongjio to be so honest. Of course, he could guess Rongjio's purpose for coming here today. From start to end, Rongjio only targeted one person, the Empress. Especially the words he said just before he left the hall, it gave the Empress a push. The reason why Rongjio did this was most likely because his birth mother, noble Lady Ying, was harmed by the Empress back then. Even though this matter wasn't conclusive and there was no evidence, Chuning was in the limelight back then and was highly regarded by Emperor Zhouwen. Thus, he more or less knew some things. Looking at Rongjio's appearance, he clearly came prepared. No matter what, I have to thank you, Third Prince. I'll definitely repay this favor in the future. Rongjio did not seem to care. The two of them chatted for a while before parting ways. Chuning hesitated for a while and decided to return to his residence first. Previously, Lu Yun brought so many people and turned the house into a mess, so he had to hurry back to clean it up. If Yu saw this, she would definitely be very worried. In the end, Chu Luiwei did not return with Rongjin and the rest. She only used one sentence to dissuade Rongjin from stopping her. I've already arranged a time to go back with Vice Admiral Mu. Whoever delays it will be responsible. Rongjin had just gotten married to Situ Xingqian and was in the prime of his success. He originally wanted to show off his authority as the crown prince in front of Chu Luiwei, but it was a pity that he was not completely blinded by it. He knew who he could offend and who he could not. Thus, he could only sullenly give way to Chu Luiwei. As for Situ Xingqian, she did not say much from start to end and stayed out of the matter. It was as if she had forgotten that Rongjin only came to find trouble with Chu Luiwei after hearing what she said. Chu Luiwei returned to the imperial city very quickly and successfully. The moment he reached home, the door was opened from the inside before Chu Luiwei could even knock on the door. The person standing at the door was Chuning. When Chu Luiwei saw him, he was elated and shocked. "Father, why are you home? It's not a day off today." Chuning first sized her up and made sure that she was fine before he heaved a sigh of relief. "Yeah, it's good that you're back safely. I have something to ask you." The father-daughter duo returned to the house together. Chuning told Chu Luiwei everything that happened previously. Does the fourth princess's disappearance have anything to do with you?" asked Chuning uncertainly. Chu Luiwei smiled, and his eyes curved into crescents. "Didn't you say it in front of His Majesty? You said that you believed that I didn't do it. Since you said so, this naturally has nothing to do with me." Chuning then heaved a sigh of relief. That's good, that's good." Chapter 365. Chu Luiwei then went to visit Mu Qinghe, but she found that he wasn't at his residence. She waited outside the barrier for a while, but there was still no movement, so she turned around and left. She felt a little strange. If Hong Yao was here, it would have rushed out long ago. Since there was no sound for so long, Hong Yao and Mu Qinghe must not be here. What place in country Yao Chen's imperial capital could attract him? Chu Luiwei was puzzled as she turned to Prince Li's mansion. Prince Li's mansion was the same as usual. It didn't seem to have changed, but Chu Luiwei keenly noticed that the security here had become stricter. Seeing that it was her, the servants of Prince Li's mansion immediately welcomed her happily. When Yuemo heard the news, he hurriedly came out to welcome her. "Miss Luyu, you're finally back." Chu Luiwei couldn't help but laugh when she saw his excited face. "It's not my first time here. Do you have to be so excited?" Of course. You don't know, but we've been looking forward to your return these past few days." Yumo's eyes were almost brimming with tears. If she didn't come back soon, their lives would be too difficult. "Master is in the study room. I'll bring you there." As he spoke, Yuemo led Chu Luiwei to the study room. Chu Luiwei followed behind him and quietly sized up the layout of the mansion. She realized that it was indeed a little different from before. She took in all of this, but she didn't show it on her face, nor did she say anything. Soon, the two of them arrived outside the study room. Yuemo stopped. "Master is inside. You can go in." Chu Luiwei nodded slightly. Just as she walked to the door, a white figure flashed in front of her. She was very surprised. Xue. She hadn't seen Xue since she left the imperial capital. She really missed it. Xue looked at her with its tail wagging, its eyes filled with joy. It was obviously very happy about her return. It jumped twice on the spot and couldn't help but run 2 laps around Chu Luiwei. Chu Luiwei chuckled. All right, I know what you want." As she spoke, she stretched out her hand, intending to pat Xue's head. Xue obediently moved its huge head closer. Chu Luiwei's hand was halfway out when a red shadow flashed in front of his eyes. Immediately, he felt something extra on the back of his hand. She looked over and saw that it was Dumpling. At this moment, it was hugging her wrist. Its round eyes looked at her innocently and sadly, as if it was complaining about something. Chu Luiwei glanced at his hand. Very good. He was already completely occupied by Dumpling. It was impossible for him to touch Xue anymore. Xue growled. Just as she was about to charge forward, she suddenly heard a cough coming from the room. Xue immediately moved to the side obediently and looked straight ahead, as if nothing had happened before. Dumpling turned around and gave it a look of disdain. Chu Luiwei was speechless. She looked at the door of the study and walked forward. Creak! The door of the study opened. Chu Luiwei saw Rong Xiu sitting behind the table. He was wearing a black cloak and his face was a little pale. There was a cup of hot tea beside him and a book in his hand. He just sat there quietly, and there seemed to be an indescribable aura lingering around him. He was gentle and calm, like a gentleman. Hearing the sound of the door being pushed open, he raised his head. The moment he lifted his eyelids, there seemed to be countless stars flickering in his deep and clear eyes. This time, it was completely different from the previous time. Those eyes seemed to be able to contain everything in the world, but they were also high and mighty. Noble and lazy, looking down on the world. The moment their eyes met, Chu Luiwei could clearly hear her heart beating violently. The blood in her eardrums surged and seemed to be buzzing. Rong Xiu's lips curved. "You're back." Chu Luiwei nodded slightly. "Yes." Rong Xiu raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly. The door behind Chu Luiwei was suddenly closed. The dazzling sunlight was blocked outside the door. Rong Xiu opened his mouth, and his voice was as cold as jade striking against each other. "I thought you wouldn't have time to come until tomorrow." Chu Luiwei was stunned. Then an incredible idea came to her mind. Rong Xiu was jealous. Based on his means and strength, she was probably already under his control from the moment she returned to the capital. However, she first went to see her father, then went to visit Mu Qinghe, and finally came to Prince Li's mansion. Rong Xiu seemed to be unhappy because of this. Chu Luiwei couldn't help laughing. "How could I?" Rong Xiu's eyes moved slightly, but he didn't say anything. Chu Luiwei approached him step by step. Until there was only a table between them, she bent down, put her hands on the table, and approached Rong Xiu. The two were so close that they could almost hear each other's breathing. Chu Luiwei could even smell the familiar cold fragrance on him. Her heart beat faster, but her eyes were as bright as the Milky Way. The reason why I came to see you last is because, she didn't finish her words, but suddenly leaned closer and kissed Rong Xiu's lips. It was cool and hot, slow and urgent. Rong Xiu didn't seem to expect Chu Luiwei to suddenly do this, and he was stunned for a moment. Chu Luiwei whispered softly, and her voice was broken between her lips and teeth. That's the answer. Of course, she missed him and wanted to come back to see him as soon as possible. But there were some things that needed to be dealt with first. Otherwise, the two of them would only meet for a short time, and she would have to busy herself with other things. So, she might as well settle all the messy things on hand before coming. Without any burden, she felt refreshed. The only thing she didn't expect was that she missed Rong Xiu more than she imagined. It wasn't obvious when she was in Tai Yen Academy, and it wasn't obvious on the way back. Even when she just arrived at Prince Li's mansion, she didn't think much of it. But the moment she saw Rong Xiu, an overwhelming longing suddenly surged in her heart. The longing that she had intentionally or unintentionally suppressed instantly drowned her. Her mind seemed to be blank, and there was only one thought left. Kiss him. Only when she touched his soft and cool lips did she finally feel at ease. After a while, when she saw that Rong Xiu didn't move, she bit him lightly in a fit of pique. Rong Xiu reached out to pull her, and at the same time, counterattacked. However, Chu Luiwei lightly licked his lips and quickly moved away. She leaned toward his ear and gently placed her hand on his cloak as she softly asked, "Why are you here?" "Rong Xiu, aren't you hot?" "Oh, I almost forgot. Prince Li is seriously ill, and now is the time to recuperate. You can't..." Rong Xiu's eyes instantly darkened. The next moment he suddenly grabbed Chu Luiwei's chin with one hand, tilted his head, and kissed her fiercely. If he could still tolerate the situation, he would really be sick. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 366. After Rong Xiu was satisfied, he finally let go of Chu Luiwei slowly. He lowered his eyes and looked at the girl's red and slightly swollen lips. He rubbed his fingers affectionately and spoke lazily in a hoarse voice. Looks like you made the right decision." Chu Luiwei snapped out of her daze and immediately glared at him. However, her watery eyes didn't have any fierceness. Instead, they looked even more breathtaking. Rong Xiu chuckled and kissed her again before finally letting go. "Come here." Chu Luiwei walked around the table to his side and leaned over to look at the book he had put aside. "What are you looking at?" Every time she came, Rong Xiu seemed to be reading. She glanced at it and saw that it seemed to be a biography. Rong Xiu held her slender waist and pulled her into his arms. Chu Luiwei leaned against his chest just like that. Rong Xiu rubbed her waist with one hand and took the book with the other. "Do you want to read it?" Chu Luiwei felt that Rong Xiu's hand seemed to have magical powers. He only pressed her waist twice, and a wave of heat spread through her body. She felt as if her entire body had gone limp and relaxed. She relaxed her body and felt that the fatigue she had felt during this period of time seemed to have lessened quite a bit. She took the book and looked up in surprise when she saw the name on it. "You moved out of the academy?" She remembered seeing this book in Yifeng Courtyard. Rong Xiu didn't find it strange that she remembered, so he nodded nonchalantly. "Mother's things have basically been packed, so there's no need to continue living here." Of course, another important reason was that the person in his arms wouldn't be staying there for too long. Chu Luiwei recalled the things he had taken out from Jiuyou Tower and nodded in understanding. She unintentionally flipped open the book and took a look. Rong Xiu had been pretending to be sick ever since he returned to the imperial capital. He rarely stepped out of Prince Li's mansion and basically stayed here. Hence, she was actually quite curious about what Rong Xiu usually read. However, Chu Luiwei was suddenly stunned with just a glance. It was actually a map. And it was a map of the imperial capital. After she was reborn, she had specially investigated the situation of the imperial capital, including the overall terrain of the imperial capital. Hence, when she first saw this map, she immediately recognized that it was a map of the imperial capital. What shocked her even more was the detailed distribution of the military forces on the map. The entire imperial capital's defense situation. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. So, what Rongxiu was not reading books every day, she instinctively looked up at Rongxiu. Rongxiu's expression was normal, as if he didn't think it was a big deal at all. Chu Liyue thought that he didn't expect her to be able to understand this thing and couldn't help but tug at his clothes. Rongxiu, read this every day? Rongxiu glanced at her expression, and his lips curved up slightly. Not every day. I read it occasionally to relieve boredom. Chu Liyue was speechless. Relieve boredom? What kind of person would think that reading this kind of thing was relieving boredom? With this map, Rongxiu could easily control the entire imperial capital. If he had the military forces, it was only a matter of time before he broke into the imperial capital. Chu Liyue's lips moved and finally couldn't help but ask, "Why? Are you looking at the map of the imperial capital?" She originally thought that Rongxiu would look shocked, but a smile surfaced on his face instead. He bent down and kissed Chu Liyue's glabella. "You can really understand it." Chu Liyue instantly felt complicated. Rongxiu already knew that she had seen through what it was, but he didn't seem to want to hide it at all. "You aren't worried that I'll say this?" As a prince, it wouldn't be a good thing if Emperor Jiawen found out that he had such a thing in his hands. Rongxiu raised his brows and said matter-of-factly, "You're my fiancé. You are this prince's fiancé. If something happens to this prince, you won't be able to escape." Chu Liyue was speechless. Why does this tone sound like he's saying, "You're my woman when you're alive, and you're my ghost when you're dead"? Rongxiu lifted his chin. "You can continue reading." Chu Liyue hesitated for a moment and flipped to the back. After looking at it for a while, she realized that they were all similar maps. Even though every map was different, they were all equally detailed. As Chu Liyue looked at them, she became more and more shocked. These maps, they seemed to involve half of country Yaochen. Perhaps even the military might not have such a detailed map. Chu Liyue was really shocked. "Rongxiu, look at these. What exactly are you planning to do?" If it weren't for the fact that Rongxiu didn't have any military power, she would have really thought that Rongxiu was planning to rebel. It's just a boring pastime. Rongxiu really didn't seem to care. When he saw her shocked expression, he couldn't help but chuckle softly and hug her tighter. "Her worried look for me is really touching." Chu Liyue subconsciously turned her gaze and looked at the bookshelf behind him. It was filled with books. A scary thought suddenly appeared in her mind. Could these also be? She long knew that Rongxiu was much stronger than he looked on the surface, but what she saw in front of her was still beyond her imagination. "What are you thinking about?" asked Rongxiu. Chu Liyue looked at him sympathetically. "I'm thinking that Rongjin is really unlucky to have met you." Rongjin thought that his crown prince position and even the throne were already in his bag after he set the marriage agreement with Situ Xingqian. Little did he know, Rongxiu raised his brows. He wasn't interested in comparing himself to Rongjin, but since it was her compliment, he still chose to accept it. Chu Liyue placed the book back and continued to nestle in Rongxiu's arms. Rongxiu rubbed his chin against her soft hair. "Let's not talk about this. Why don't we talk about the wedding date?" Chu Liyue was dazed and knitted her brows awkwardly. "We really need to discuss this matter properly. Mu Qinghe is still in the imperial city, and I don't know when he'll return to the Tianling dynasty. If he's leaving soon, we won't have time to get married. If he wants to wait for a while, we can hold our wedding. However, I don't know when I'll have to follow him back to the Tianling dynasty. The road ahead is dangerous, and I don't know what kind of situation I'll face when I return. If Rongxiu is involved, it'll be even harder to handle. Of course, I can't bear to leave Rongxiu, but I have to go back to the Tianling dynasty." She knitted her brows and thought for a long time. Suddenly, she stood up and left Rongxiu's arms. She sat opposite him with a serious expression. "Rongxiu, I have something to tell you." Rongxiu looked at her with deep eyes. "I'm all ears." The next day, Rongjin and Situ Xingqian finally returned to the imperial city. Chu Liyue was sitting cross-legged at home. She placed her hands on her knees and absorbed the surrounding heaven and earth force. Suddenly, Eunuch Min's voice came from outside the door. Lord Chu Ning, Ms. Lu Yu, His Majesty and Her Majesty are waiting in the palace. Please come in. Digression. Yesterday, I slept at 3 o'clock again. I was about to go crazy. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 367. Palace. When Chu Luiyue arrived with Chu Ning, Emperor Zhuan and the Empress were already waiting in the palace. Rong Jin and Situ Xingchen were also seated below. On the other side was another person, Rong Jiu. Chu Luiyue had already heard about what happened from Chu Ning, so she wasn't surprised that Rong Jiu was here. Her gaze quickly swept across the few people in the palace. Emperor Zhuan was expressionless, but his eyes were dark. Compared to the last time she saw her, the Empress looked much more haggard, as if she had aged by 10 years. It was obvious that the recent events had tortured her quite a bit. When Rong Jin saw Chu Luiyue, a complicated expression flashed across his face. He was holding a hairpin in his hand. Chu Luiyue guessed that it was the one that they said they found Rong Zhen in their backyard. Situ Xingchen and Rong Jiu looked calm, and one couldn't tell what was going on. Chu Ning and Chu Luiyue bowed one by one. Emperor Zhuan told the two of them to sit down. Okay, since everyone is here, let's start. Emperor Zhuan had already lost his patience, so he went straight to the point as he looked at Situ Xingchen. He looked at Situ Xingchen and asked, Xingchen, you previously said that you saw Lu Yu and Zhen together. Is that true? Situ Xingchen stood up and bowed. Your Majesty, I don't dare to lie, and everything I said is true. As Juyo Tower caught fire that day, I remember it very clearly. After Juyo Tower collapsed, I quickly went back to pack my luggage because Tai Yen Academy was leaving the next day. I didn't expect to coincidentally see Rong Zhen and Chu Luiyue on the way. Emperor Zhuan asked, was there anyone else then? There was an elder in a long black robe, but I didn't see his face. Then, did you hear what they said? I was quite a distance away, so I didn't hear them. However, I saw that the two of them were very close, so I thought that they were very close. I didn't expect. Emperor Zhuan's face turned even colder. The elder in a long black robe who followed them was definitely Si Meng. If Situ Xingchen was lying, how did she know about Si Meng's existence? Actually, when I saw this scene that day, I felt a little strange. Situ Xingchen looked up at Emperor Zhuan and hesitantly said, that's because His Majesty had just married Prince Li and Chu Luiyue that day. So when I saw her with Rong Zhen, I was confused for a long time. Everyone understood. The timing was too special. No matter how close Chu Luiyue and Rong Zhen were, they shouldn't have been together on the day of Rong Zhen's marriage. Moreover, who didn't know that there was a conflict between the two of them? It was really suspicious that they were together. Emperor Zhuan asked again. And then? Did you see where they went? Situ Xingchen shook her head. At that time, I only took a glance from afar. Because I was in a hurry to go back, I left. I don't know where they're going. Emperor Zhuan nodded. Sit down. Then he turned to look at Chu Luiyue. Lu Yu, you heard what I said just now. What do you have to say? Chu Luiyue lightly knocked on the chair's armrest with one hand and looked at Situ Xingchen in deep thought. What she said just now was actually very vague, but Si Meng's existence gave her words a lot more credibility. After all, even Emperor Zhuan didn't know about Si Meng's existence previously. Since Situ Xingchen could say this, it was naturally easy for people to believe her. This also meant that Situ Xingchen had long known about Si Meng's existence. Perhaps she even knew what happened that day. But for some reason, she couldn't say it completely and could only choose a middle ground. After all, even if that was the case, she could still push Rong Zhen's matter to her. Chu Luiyue lightly said, I didn't see Rong Zhen at all. That day, I didn't see Rong Zhen. That day, Prince Li sent someone to send me and my father home. After that, the people of the Chu family sent an invitation, and my father went there. I stayed at home the whole time and didn't come out. The Chu family can testify to this. Quite a few people knew that Chu Ning went to the Chu residence, and it was privately discussed for a long time. Everyone knew that the Chu family regretted chasing Chu Ning and his daughter out and was thinking of ways to persuade them to go back. Chu Ning said, "That's right. That's right. That day, wanted to go back with me, but I stopped her, so she stayed at home." "Even if that's the case, who can prove that she didn't go out when you left, Lord Chu Ning?" Rong Jin retorted. "Besides, the two of you are father and daughter, so I'm afraid your testimony can't be completely true." Chu Ning knitted his brows slightly. If the other party kept saying this, they couldn't refute him. This was because he and you really couldn't prove that you was at home during this period of time. Chu Liwei suddenly said, "That mysterious hairstyle was discovered by the Chu family. I heard that the hairpin appeared out of nowhere. Even Her Majesty the Empress couldn't tell where it came from. Then, how can everyone know that the rest of your words are true?" The Empress was furious. Chu Liwei really touched a sore spot. His Majesty was already very unhappy with her because of this hairpin yesterday. Now that she brought it up again, isn't she trying to make His Majesty look bad? Rong Jin knitted his brows and hid the hairpin in his hands. He originally thought that this hairpin was solid evidence, but it was hard to say what exactly was going on from his mother's reaction. Both parties insisted on their own words, and the situation was at a standstill. Rong Jiao suddenly said, "Actually, the key to this matter is to find Rong Zhen's whereabouts. Her Majesty, Rong Zhen's pearl of essence has shattered. Based on her own abilities, she definitely can't leave the palace silently. This also means that she must have left with Si Meng's help. Even though Si Meng is already dead, didn't he leave behind any clues?" The Empress was even more frustrated. She knew that every time she mentioned Si Meng, it would make His Majesty even more unhappy and disgusted. But now, if she wanted to push all the blame to Chu Liwei, Si Meng was a very important person. She rubbed her temples and said, "No. Si Meng died suddenly. Si Meng died very suddenly." Speaking of this, she suddenly paused and looked at Chu Liwei suspiciously. "Right. Speaking of which, Si Meng is a stage 5 warrior, and normal people aren't his match. The person who can kill him so quickly must be very strong. There aren't many people with such standards in the entire imperial city." Chu Liwei raised his brows and smiled as he asked, "Why? Does Her Majesty suspect that I killed him? Aren't you thinking too highly of a rank 2 warrior like me?" Love Network provided a better reading experience. Chapter 368. The Empress smiled coldly. "You're indeed just a stage 2 warrior, but everyone in the Imperial City knows that you can win against a stage 4 warrior. Perhaps you didn't display your true abilities at the Qing Jiao competition? Other than you, who else would know about this? Besides, there's also that weird fiend of yours." She was talking about Dumpling. Back then, Dumpling directly swallowed Heng Jingshua's force, which left a deep impression on many people. The Empress always felt that Chu Liwei was unpredictable. Previously, Rong Zhen had mentioned that Chu Liwei went from a useless person to a genius that everyone envied because she met with a fortuitous encounter. Perhaps Si Meng was really killed by her or the person behind her. You also went up to the 6th floor of Juyo Tower previously. How do you explain this?" The more the Empress spoke, the more certain she sounded. Emperor Zhwen and the rest's expressions gradually changed. The Empress's words sounded ridiculous at first, but upon closer thought, it wasn't impossible. In the past few months, too many strange things had happened to Chu Liwei. Things that seemed impossible to others seemed to be reasonable when it came to her. As for Si Meng's death, it was hard to say. Chu Liwei was caught between laughter and tears. "Thank you for thinking so highly of me, Your Majesty. But if it's really like what you said and I killed Si Meng, why didn't I directly kill the 4th princess as well? Wouldn't everything be over if I did that?" The Empress was stumped. Rong Jin angrily said, "Of course, it's because you're afraid of exposing your identity. As a princess, Rong Zhen has something that can help her. Once you force her into a corner, she'll definitely expose your identity and location." Chu Liwei looked at Rong Jin as if he were looking at an idiot. "Your Highness, let me remind you that Her Majesty just said that I can instantly kill a stage 5 warrior. Do you think that the fourth princess's abilities and reaction are stronger than a stage 5 warrior's? Rong Jin was speechless, and his face turned red and white. Si Meng must be by Rong Zhen's side. If Chu Luiwei could kill Si Meng, it would be even easier to kill Rong Zhen. She could definitely solve everything before Rong Zhen sent out a distress signal. The Empress's face turned even uglier. She was the only one who knew that the item Rong Zhen was asking for help wasn't with her but with Si Meng. Ever since her pearl of essence shattered, Si Meng had always been by her side, never leaving her side. For the sake of safety, they had already made preparations for this. However, saying these things now would prove that the person who killed Si Meng was more powerful than expected. Instead, it would make His Majesty even more disgusted. Rong Jin looked at Situ Xingqian at the side awkwardly and softly said, "Don't worry. Xingqian, what do we do now?" Situ Xingqian sneered in her heart, and her hatred for Rong Jin increased. Rong Jin was even more brainless than she expected. She had no idea how he had managed to sit on the crown prince's position for so long. Situ Xingqian looked down, and her eyelashes fluttered as she innocently and sincerely said, "Your Highness, I only saw what happened." "Your Highness, Xingqian only saw that much that day. I've already said what I can, but there's more that I'm powerless to do." Rong Jin was a little anxious. According to what you said, Rong Zhen must have been hidden by Chu Luiwei, but she doesn't admit it now. "This, Your Highness, I didn't say that. It's just that you said that the fourth princess met with trouble, so I unintentionally told you about this. Is it because that elder's identity is a little troublesome?" Situ Xingqian discreetly removed herself from this matter. However, Rong Jin didn't realize this at all. On the contrary, Situ Xingqian's words reminded him of something. "Chu Luiwei, you've said so much, but you still haven't proven your innocence. On the other hand, Xingqian has never been to country Yaochun before, so she doesn't know about Si Meng's existence. If she's lying, how did she know about Si Meng? Besides, she has no feud with anyone involved in this matter, so why would she frame you? On the other hand, Rong Zhen offended you before, so you probably want to use this chance to take revenge, right?" Chu Luiwei's gaze landed on Situ Xingqian, and he smiled meaningfully. "Your Highness, you're right, but I really don't understand. Eldest Princess Situ and I have never interacted before, and we don't have any feud. I really don't know why Eldest Princess Situ would frame me like this." Situ Xingqian looked at Chu Luiwei calmly, and her expression was as gentle and generous as usual. "Ms. Chu, I didn't frame you. From the start to the end, I just said what I saw and heard." Chu Luiwei's eyes turned, and her gaze landed on Situ Xingqian's sleeves. When she saw Situ Xingqian again at Tai Yen Academy, she realized that Situ Xingqian had changed her clothes, and the cloud pattern on her sleeves was gone. When she looked at it again today, it was still the same. Chu Luiwei didn't believe that Situ Xingqian didn't know that Rong Xiu had burned most of his clothes that day. If she didn't feel that she was greatly humiliated, she wouldn't be like this. It was obvious that eldest Princess Situ had shifted her anger onto Lin Mengya. The Empress took the chance to say, "Your Majesty, Xingqian's words are indeed more trustworthy." On the other hand, Chu Luiwei still doesn't have any evidence to prove where she was that day. "From what I see, we won't be able to get anything out of her if this continues. Why don't we lock her up and order someone to interrogate her carefully? We might be able to come up with a different conclusion." The palace fell into a temporary silence. The Empress clearly meant that she wanted to torture Chu Luiwei. Chu Ning stood up first. "Absolutely not. I definitely can't watch you be locked up without doing anything. What kind of place is the dungeon? How can you go to such a place? Besides, nobody knows if the Empress's men are inside. Once you goes in, I don't know what she will have to endure. Vice Admiral Mu is still in the Imperial City, and he will bring you to the Tianling dynasty at any time. If we lock you up now, may I ask your Majesty, how are you going to explain this to Vice Admiral Mu?" Bringing up Mu Qinghe indeed made the Empress a lot more fearful. Then what do you think we should do? Are we just going to let it pass like this?" At this point, Rong Jiu, who had been sitting at the side and keeping quiet, suddenly spoke. "Actually, it's very simple. As long as we find Rongzhen, the truth will naturally be revealed. The Empress sneered. You make it sound so simple. We still have to ask Chu Luiyue if he's willing to hand Zhen over. Rong Jiao's expression became strange as he stood up and bowed to Emperor Jiaowen solemnly. I'm guilty. Father, please punish me. Emperor Jiaowen knitted his brows tightly. Rong Jiao, what are you doing? Rong Jiao said word by word. I saw the fourth princess a few days ago. Mobile users, please browse the internet for a better reading experience. Chapter 369. His words were like a clap of thunder. The Empress and the rest were dazed and shocked. Even the calm Emperor Jiaowen couldn't help but stand up. What did you say? You saw Rongzhen previously. When and where is it? Rong Jiao paused and said, You should ask her this question. Perhaps it's more appropriate for you to ask Her Majesty. The moment these words were spoken, everyone present was stunned. The Empress was confused. Rong Jiao, what do you mean? Rong Jiao slowly said, I know what she means. I believe the Empress is well aware of what I mean. You clearly know where Rongzhen is, so why do you have to pretend that you don't and even create such a big show? The Empress was almost confused by Rong Jiao's words. Her exquisite brows knitted together as she stared at Rong Jiao. She finally realized that Rong Jiao was here to go against her this time. Her voice instantly turned cold, and it had the usual sternness of the harem. Rong Jiao, do you know what you're saying? Ever since Rongzhen went missing, I've been worried day and night. Even now, I'm still worried about her. You have no evidence, so how can you say such things? As she spoke, she turned to look at Emperor Jiaowen, and her eyes were filled with anger and sadness. Your Majesty is wise. I really don't know where Rongzhen is now. I also don't know where the third prince's words came from. Emperor Jiaowen stared at Rong Jiao coldly. What do you mean by what you said just now? Rong Jiao's gaze swept across the Empress as he lightly said, What do you mean? From the start to the end, this is a lie that the Empress directed and acted out herself. She hid Rongzhen and wanted to take the chance to slander Lord Chu Ning and his daughter. Rong Jiao's low and powerful voice reverberated in the palace, and it was clear and audible. Chu Liuyue's heart tingled, and he couldn't help but look at Rong Jiao. He never expected Rong Jiao to say such things. How dare you? After the shock, the Empress finally recovered her senses. She had nowhere to vent her anger, so she couldn't help but curse. What nonsense are you spouting? Rong Jiao, where do you think this place is? Who do you think this consort is? How dare you make such irresponsible remarks? As she spoke, she quickly rushed toward Rong Jiao and raised her hand to harshly slap him. This consort must teach you a lesson today. Empress! Emperor Jiaowen coldly scolded and immediately nailed the Empress to the ground. She suddenly recovered her senses and frantically turned around to see Emperor Jiaowen glaring at her with anger. As the Empress, what are you doing? The Empress suddenly came back to her senses. She had indeed lost her bearing as an Empress. Emperor Jiaowen was extremely disappointed in the Empress. Rong Jiao only said a few sentences, and the Empress was agitated to this extent. She screamed and insulted him without any grace. She even wanted to hit him in front of him. What was the difference between her and those shrews on the streets? She had completely disgraced the royal family. Sensing Emperor Jiaowen's anger, the Empress was afraid and aggrieved. Your Majesty, I know my mistake. But Xianxia didn't do it on purpose. Did you hear what Rong Jiao said just now? Even though I'm not his birth mother, I'm still considered his mother. Yet he slandered me like this. As the Empress spoke, 2 rows of tears fell from her eyes. She clutched her handkerchief tightly with one hand and covered her chest as if she were in extreme pain. When Rong Jiao heard the words birth mother, murderous intent flashed across his eyes. It was fine if she didn't mention this, but now that she did, that be asterisk, the Empress actually has the cheek to say such things. He lifted his clothes and knelt on the floor with a bang. What I've said is the truth. If there's even half a lie in what I said, may I be struck by lightning. This was a vicious oath. Once this was said, even the Empress, who was busy crying, couldn't help but pause for a moment. Chu Liwei squinted his eyes and looked at Chu Ning questioningly. Chu Ning slightly shook his head, indicating that he didn't know what was going on. Chu Liwei retracted his gaze and sized up Rong Jiao again. How strange, Rong Jiao has never interacted with us, so why does he keep speaking up for us this time? He's even willing to put his life on the line. As a prince, his words carry a lot of weight. As expected, Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. If Rong Jiao dares to make such a vicious oath, then what he said is very likely true. Empress, what exactly is going on? Emperor Jiawen had already lost his patience as he angrily asked. The Empress shivered, and her tears flowed even more profusely. I really don't know. Since Her Majesty doesn't want to admit it, then I'll remind you. Do you still remember Heptagon Alley? Asked Rong Jiao lightly. The Empress suddenly paused and looked at Rong Jiao in shock. How does he know that place? Emperor Jiawen boomed. If I didn't remember wrongly, Heptagon Alley used to be a very lively place in the imperial city. However, after a murder happened, it was gradually abandoned. Father, you're wise. The current Heptagon Alley can be said to be deserted and very quiet. But for some reason, that place is highly favored by Her Majesty. After I returned to the imperial city, I didn't have much to do, so I occasionally strolled around the imperial city. Unintentionally, I saw Her Majesty at Heptagon Alley twice. The Empress's heart suddenly sank. Emperor Jiawen glanced at the Empress. Continue. The first time was 1.5 months ago. At that time, I saw Her Majesty from afar, and I thought I saw wrongly. After all, Heptagon Alley was very deserted, and not many people would go there normally. But because I was curious, I waited nearby for a while. After an hour, Her Majesty left. I followed closely behind and wanted to see what exactly was going on. However, I shockingly discovered that there was an extremely strong barrier in Heptagon Alley. The Empress's face was already ghastly pale. Rong Jin suddenly thought of something, and his eyes shrunk. As I was worried that I would be discovered, I left. After a month, which was more than 10 days ago, I was curious and couldn't hold it in, so I went to Heptagon Alley again. I didn't expect to coincidentally see Her Majesty walk out there. Upon hearing this, Chu Liwei also looked at the Empress and saw her anxious expression as if she had lost her mind. I met her twice in a row, so I couldn't help but be suspicious. However, I didn't have a clue, so I didn't say anything. Coincidentally, I met Rong Zhen on the streets the day before, and I realized that the last place she went to was Heptagon Alley. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 370. Impossible. You're lying. The Empress finally couldn't hold it in and screamed. Her hands trembled as she pointed at Rong Jiao. Due to her anger and panic, her originally well-maintained face became distorted. Zhen Zhen is missing. She had already lost contact with Rong Zhen for many days. If Rong Zhen was really at Heptagon Alley, how could she not know? Previously, she had already asked the Xi family to secretly search the entire imperial city, but there was no news. After the matter was exposed, Emperor Jiawen also sent people to search everywhere, but there were still no clues. She almost suspected that Rong Zhen had been brought out of the imperial city. Yet, Rong Jiao suddenly jumped out and said that Rong Zhen was at Heptagon Alley. Rong Jiao looked at the Empress's finger that was almost poking his face and saw the beautiful and sharp armor on it. His lips twitched without much of a smile. Her Majesty, why are you so agitated? Whether it's true or not, we just need to send people to search, and the truth will be revealed. Anyway, Heptagon Alley is in the imperial city. It won't waste too much time to send people to search. No! The Empress almost instinctively objected. But once she said that, she suddenly realized that something was amiss. Behind her, Emperor Jiawen's voice was cold. I think this is a good idea. Since Rong Jiao said that Rong Zhen is there, we just need to find her there. If we find her, it proves that Rong Jiao is telling the truth. If we don't, Rong Jiao, do you know what consequences you will have to bear? Rong Jiao looked calm. I know. If Rong Zhen isn't at Heptagon Alley, I'm willing to never leave the imperial city again. Emperor Jiawen was stunned as he didn't expect Rongjio to make such a request. Actually, during this period he had been thinking about how to arrange for Rongjio. Let him return to the Northwest Army? Impossible. That's no different from letting a tiger return to the mountain. Let him stay in the imperial city? That's not appropriate either. Rongjio has many military achievements, and he's at his peak. It's too obvious to abruptly remove him from his military position. In actual fact, before this, Emperor Jiawen had already received many memorials requesting for Rongjio to return to the Northwest Army. But he had many worries in his heart, so he kept putting this matter aside. But this time, Rongjio took the initiative to suggest that as long as he didn't find Rongzhen in Heptagon Alley, he would stay in the imperial city forever. On the one hand, Emperor Jiawen wanted to find Rongzhen. On the other hand, he wanted to use this chance to make Rongjio stay. No matter how he looked at it, it was beneficial to him. Therefore, he agreed to this suggestion without any hesitation. We will go there personally. Get ready, Eunuch Min. The Empress' legs were weak, and she almost knelt on the ground. Your Majesty! Absolutely not. Anyone could tell how guilty the Empress was, and Emperor Jiawen was no exception. The more this was the case, the more he wanted to go. Empress, I'm just going to find Rongzhen. What are your intentions for obstructing me in every possible way? Do you not want me to find Rongzhen, or is there another reason? Emperor Jiawen's voice wasn't loud, but his aura was imposing. Every word was like a sharp knife that harshly stabbed into the Empress's heart. She wanted to stop Emperor Jiawen from going, but in this situation, she would seem very guilty no matter what she said. Rongjin finally recovered his senses and went forward to support the Empress. Imperial Mother, why do you have to do this? Wasn't it just an alley? If Imperial Father wants to go, why must you stop him? There was no benefit in going against Imperial Father like this. The Empress glanced at Rongjin weakly, and her tears fell again. What does he know? Chu Lue suddenly stood up and said in a soft voice, Your Majesty, we'll go with you. You can get a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 371. Situ Xingqian felt that Chu Liyue's words were ear-piercing. The look in her eyes changed, and the corners of her mouth curled up, but she quickly pulled it down. When Rongjin saw the bright smile on Chu Liyue's face, he felt conflicted. Getting engaged with Situ Xingqian was his best choice now. When everything went smoothly, he secretly rejoiced. With Situ Xingqian around, everything would be much easier after that. He originally thought that he didn't care much about Chu Liyue. After all, Situ Xingqian didn't lose to Chu Liyue in any aspect. However, he only realized that this wasn't the case at this point. As for the Empress, she couldn't hear what Chu Liyue was saying. She looked pitiful, and her eyes were lifeless as she looked at Emperor Jiawen's cold and decisive back view. She felt hopeless. If it weren't for Rongjin and Situ Xingqian supporting her, she would have long collapsed on the floor. Chu Liyue looked at the Empress in deep thought before he turned around and followed Chu Ning. When they reached the palace entrance, Eunuch Min had already arranged for a normal horse carriage to wait for them. Chu Liyue couldn't help but sigh. Eunuch Min is indeed smart to be able to serve Emperor Jiawen for so many years. Emperor Jiawen is still wearing his dragon robe. If he goes out like this, it will definitely cause a huge commotion. Also, the Empress is in a terrible state, and she can't meet anyone. Using such a normal horse carriage can reduce the trouble to the greatest extent. The group of people then walked toward Heptagon Alley in a low-key manner. Emperor Jiawen sat in his own horse carriage, and only Eunuch Min followed him. The rest of the people shared a horse carriage. In the horse carriage, everyone sat facing each other, and nobody spoke. The atmosphere was tense, and the air seemed to have frozen. Finally, Rongjin couldn't help but softly persuade her, Mother, don't worry. Someone wants to frame us, but they might not have the ability to do so. Father has always been wise, and he'll definitely be able to distinguish right from wrong and clear your name. This someone was naturally referring to Rongjio. In Rongjin's opinion, if Rongjio didn't interfere, this matter wouldn't have developed to this state. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at Rongjio, who was sitting opposite him, and hatred flashed across his eyes. Previously, because of Rongjio, he was grounded by his father and had many of his rights taken away. This time, it was because of him. However, Rongjio leaned against the wall with his eyes closed. His expression was calm, as if he didn't care about all of this. "Rongjio, we have no feud with you. Aren't you afraid of retribution for framing us?" Rongjin finally couldn't hold it in and questioned her softly. Rongjio opened his eyes and looked at him expressionlessly. "Imperial brother, why do you say that? I just wanted to help father find Rongzhen. What I said in the main hall was the truth. What do you mean by framing?" Rongjin almost exploded in anger when he saw that Rongjin still refused to admit it. If it weren't for the fact that they were in a horse carriage and that there were many people around, he would have long gone forward and harshly beaten Rongjio up. Chu Luiwei sat at the side and started chatting with Chu Ning. "Father, actually, the trip to Taiyan Academy this time was quite interesting." Chu Ning was originally a little worried, but he felt much more at ease when he saw that his daughter was very calm. Hearing her talk about Taiyan Academy, he couldn't help but be curious. "Oh, really? I heard that their library is very big. What did you read?" Chu Luiwei smiled and said, "Actually, I didn't read much. Actually, I didn't look at many, but I did find some that I liked." At the side, Situ Xingqian's eyelids harshly twitched. "Didn't read much?" Chu Luiwei really has the cheek to say this. I clearly remember that not long after Chu Luiwei went in, the records outside were already stacked up. The more hateful thing was that, according to Mentor, she even found an Earth Stage warrior technique. Even though Situ Xingqian had always been studying celestial physician and wasn't very interested in warrior techniques, she still felt very disgusted when she saw that Chu Luiwei had obtained such a treasure. Every word of hers sounded like she was purposely showing off. Situ Xingqian couldn't maintain the smile on her face as she looked down and pretended to be quiet. The Empress gradually regained her senses. When she saw Chu Luiwei and Chu Ningjing chatting happily, her heart burned with anger. All of this is clearly Chu Luiwei's fault. I must have hidden Rongzhen and colluded with Rongjio to frame me. Now, my heart is hanging in midair, and I'm being tortured, but Chu Luiwei can still smile so easily. "It's all your fault. It's all your fault." Hearing the sound of the horse carriage on the limestone floor, the Empress knew that they were getting closer to Heptagon Alley, and she became increasingly anxious. Finally, she couldn't help but curse and pounce on Chu Luiwei. Chu Luiwei had already seen her actions from the corner of his eyes, so he gently dodged and avoided her. Don't. A low sound was heard. The Empress's head directly hit the wall of the horse carriage. "Mother!" Rongjin and Situ Xingqian didn't manage to pull the Empress back in time. When they heard the sound, it was already too late. The Empress's forehead hurt, and her vision turned black. "Mother, are you okay?" Rongjin was very anxious as he hurriedly helped the Empress up. Situ Xingqian knitted her brows. "Miss Chu, even if you're unhappy with the Empress, you shouldn't do this." During this period of time, the fourth princess went missing, and the Empress was worried. How could she withstand such a collision? Upon hearing this, Rongjin looked at Chu Luiwei with more hatred and anger. Chu Luiwei blinked. "Eldest Princess Situ, your words are too interesting. Everyone saw clearly what happened just now. The Empress bumped into me on her own. If I didn't dodge, should I just sit there and wait to be hit?" Situ Xingqian seemed to hesitate for a while and said, "But you're very strong and it's easy for you to stop the Empress." In other words, Chu Luiwei did it on purpose. Chu Luiwei laughed. "Eldest Princess Situ, the Crown Prince isn't weak either. Are you saying that he's useless and can't hold his mother back?" Situ Xingqian was stumped. She didn't expect Chu Luiwei to be so sharp-tongued. "Knock knock knock." "Masters were here. Please come down." Eunuch Min knocked on the door outside. Rongjio walked out first. Chu Luiwei and Chu Ning followed closely behind. The horse carriage stopped in a narrow alley, and Emperor Jiawen stood at the entrance of a nearby mansion. Chu Luiwei quickly scanned his surroundings and knitted his brows. This heptagon alley looked normal, but it vaguely had a very strong suppression. If one looked closely, they could sense that it came from the mansion. Emperor Jiawen looked at Chu Ning. "Open the door." Chu Ning immediately said, "Yes." But before he could do anything, the door was already opened from the inside. The slender Rongzhen appeared in front of the crowd. "Mother, you're here. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 372. Upon seeing that the person in front of her was actually Emperor Juan, Rongzhen stopped talking, and panic flashed across her eyes. "Father!" When Emperor Juan saw Rongzhen, he first heaved a sigh of relief in his heart before endless anger overwhelmed him. He suppressed the anger in his heart and asked in a low voice, "Zhenzhen, why are you here?" I. Faced with Emperor Jiawen's questioning, Rongzhen actually stuttered and didn't say anything for a while. Chu Liwei squinted his eyes and turned to look at Rongjin and Situ Xingchen, who had just helped the Empress down the carriage. "Her Majesty, Crown Prince, isn't the fourth princess here perfectly fine?" Rongjin looked up and saw Rongzhen standing at the door. His words were stuck in his throat, and his face turned green and white. At the side, Situ Xingchen's expression also changed. "Why is Rongzhen here? Didn't Elder Lian Ning say that he personally saw Chu Luiwei being brought to the forest outside the imperial city by Si Meng? Since Si Meng died in Chu Luiwei's hands, Rongzhen should have been hidden by her too. What's the situation now?" Rongjin instinctively looked at the Empress. "Mother, this... impossible." When the Empress saw Rongzhen, her reaction was more intense than anyone else's. She actually broke free from Rongjin and staggered toward Rongzhen. "Impossible. Zhenzhen isn't here. You must be a fake." Her voice was sharp and hoarse, which made people feel very uncomfortable when they heard it. In addition, her face was distorted from shock and fear, which made her look even uglier. Emperor Jiawen didn't hide the disgust in his eyes. "Empress, not only did you lie to me, but you even don't want to acknowledge your own daughter. You've really disappointed me." No matter what, he had doted on Rongzhen for more than 10 years, so he was very sure that the person in front of him was Rongzhen. To prove her innocence, the Empress actually lied through her teeth. How crazy! Rongzhen seemed to be frightened by the Empress as she nervously took a step back. "Mother, what do you mean? I'm Zhenzhen." "You're not Zhenzhen. Are you?" The Empress glared at Rongzhen. Although she was still denying it, her voice was getting softer and softer. This person was indeed Rongzhen. A sense of despair gradually filled his heart. "Tell me quickly. Was it Chu Luiwei who sent you here? It must be her, right?" The Empress was on the verge of breaking down. She looked like a lunatic. Emperor Jiawen's eyes were cold. "Rongzhen, say it yourself. What the hell is going on?" Rongzhen was stunned by the scene before her, and it took her a while to recover her senses. But it was Chu Luiwei who brought me here." Emperor Jiawen continued asking, "When?" Rongzhen quickly glanced at the Empress and lowered her eyes guiltily. "Before Chu Luiwei went to Taiyan Academy, fourth princess, you must be joking. How come I didn't know about this? Besides, if I really wanted to imprison you, why would I choose to imprison you here of all places?" Chu Luiwei scanned his surroundings. "To be honest, this is my first time here. On the other hand, Her Majesty, I heard from the third prince that you come here quite frequently. What's wrong with me that I have to hide the fourth princess here?" Rongzhen instantly panicked. It's you. You have a grudge against me, so it should be the fourth princess who has a grudge against me, right?" "To be honest, I've never been taken advantage of by you before, so why would I have a grudge against you?" Chu Luiwei spoke nonchalantly. Even though his words were unpleasant, everyone present knew that it was the truth. Rongzhen previously made things difficult for Chu Luiwei at the palace banquet, but she ended up in an embarrassing state. Later on, her pearl of essence broke, and she became a good-for-nothing. However, Chu Luiwei transformed into a genius that everyone envied. He was even picked by Mu Qinghe and had the chance to go to the Tianling dynasty. If we're talking about jealousy, Rongzhen should be the one who can't stand Chu Luiwei. Rongzhen was even more embarrassed. Rongjio lightly said, "Father, now you can believe that I'm telling the truth, right?" Emperor Jiawen's face was terrifyingly dark. "Rongzhen, move aside. I want to see what secrets there are inside. If the Empress secretly comes here often, she can definitely find out something. Rongzhen bit her lips and hesitated for a while, but she refused to move. Father, there's nothing inside. You shouldn't come in. I said move aside, hollered Emperor Jun. Rongzhen was so frightened that she shuddered, and her face turned pale. Eunuch Min tried his best to persuade her. Fourth Princess, please let me pass. Do you really think that you can stop His Majesty with just you? Things have already reached this stage, yet Rongzhen is still like this. Isn't she just making things difficult for herself? Rongzhen's eyes reddened as she looked at the Empress timidly. Emperor Jiawen sneered. Why are you looking at her? Are my words not as important as the Empress's? Rongjin immediately went forward and anxiously said, Father, please don't misunderstand. Rongzhen didn't mean it that way. Emperor Jiawen couldn't be bothered with him as he looked at the Empress deeply. Empress, now that things have reached this stage, are you going to follow me in or continue acting dumb here? The Empress whimpered, and her tears kept falling, looking very pitiful. However, Emperor Jiawen felt even more disgusted when he saw this. He lifted his foot and walked forward. Chu Ning immediately followed and said, This formation is special. Your Majesty, this barrier is a little special. I'm afraid it's not good to barge in. Why don't you let me break this barrier first? Emperor Jiawen stood still. Okay. Force gathered in Chu Ning's palm, and a strong suppression gradually spread out. Then he raised his hand, and a strong force suddenly flew out. The transparent barrier suffered a powerful impact, and ripples began to form. The terrifying force spread in all directions. Rongzhen, who was standing inside the barrier, was caught off guard and was affected by the force. She moved back a few steps and almost fell to the ground. She finally steadied herself and anxiously turned around as if she was afraid of something. Just as Chu Ning was about to attack again, Rongzhen finally couldn't help but shout. Stop fighting! I'll just open the barrier. Rongzhen. When the Empress heard this, she seemed to be agitated as she immediately screamed. Rongzhen was shocked as she shrunk her shoulders. Mother, father is already here. He'll know sooner or later. As she spoke, her hand trembled as she touched the barrier. Chu Luiwei focused his gaze. There seemed to be something hidden in Rongzhen's palm. Buzz. With a buzz, the barrier suddenly opened from the middle. Emperor Jiawen walked forward first. Mother! Rongjin gasped. The crowd turned around and saw that the Empress had suddenly fainted. Chu Luiwei clicked his tongue. Isn't it a little too late to pretend to faint now? Emperor Jiawen didn't seem to care as he walked straight in. Chu Luiwei and Chu Ning followed closely behind. When they saw the scene in the courtyard clearly, even Chu Luiwei couldn't help but gasp. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 373. The courtyard was empty, and only a skeleton was hanging in the middle. From the tattered clothes, it seemed to be a young man, but his body was almost completely corroded, and one couldn't see his original appearance. The most serious injury on his entire body was his face. It was as if someone had harshly slashed his face with an axe. His face was a mess of flesh and blood, and one couldn't even distinguish his features, let alone recognize who he was. Below the corpse was a bronze cauldron. The edges of the bronze cauldron were stained with dried blood. The pungent smell of blood spread from within. It was disgusting. However, this wasn't the scariest thing. This was because there were a few skeletons on the ground around the corpse. With one look, one could tell that they were human skeletons. Unlike the hanging corpses, only white bones were left on the ground, and they looked like they had been dead for a long time. This scene caused the hearts and minds of the people who walked in to be shaken. The place fell into dead silence, and the space seemed to have frozen. After some time, Emperor Jiawen recovered his senses and suddenly hollered, "Bring the Empress over!" The Emperor was enraged. Even Rongjin, who was previously protecting the Empress, couldn't take it as he stiffly carried the Empress over. The Empress's eyes were still tightly shut as if she had completely fainted. Emperor Jiawen stared at the skeletons, and the veins on his forehead popped out. Beat her. If the Empress still doesn't wake up, continue to beat her. The crowd was stunned. Emperor Jiawen actually ordered people to beat the Empress? He was really mad. How could Rong Jin bear to do this? He also couldn't watch others beat up his mother. He hurriedly blocked the Empress and knelt down. Father, the truth hasn't been found yet. If you treat mother like this, you'll hurt her. Emperor Jiawen hurriedly walked forward and harshly kicked Rong Jin's shoulder. Get lost. Rong Jin didn't dare to resist and was directly kicked to the side. Emperor Jiawen raised his hand and was about to slap the Empress. Situ Xingqian stood at the side. Even though she didn't want to be involved, she had no choice. Seeing that Emperor Jiawen had already lifted the Empress up, Situ Xingqian finally spoke. Your Majesty, please reconsider. The Crown Prince was right. Nothing was clear yet. Why not wait until everything was clear before making a decision? At that time, if the Empress is really guilty, it won't be too late for you to punish her personally. Emperor Jiawen paused in his actions. At this moment, the Empress who had fainted suddenly woke up. She slowly opened her eyes and was dazed when she saw Emperor Jiawen's face right in front of her. Your Majesty. Then she seemed to have just realized that Emperor Jiawen was grabbing her collar, and her face was filled with shock and panic. Your Majesty, what are you doing? Emperor Jiawen sneered and directly pushed her to the ground. Don't you know what good things you've done? You'd better tell me clearly what's going on. The Empress knelt on the ground, weeping and complaining about her ignorance. Oh no. I really don't know. Emperor Jiawen looked at Rong Zhen. Rong Zhen, tell me. Rong Zhen timidly took a step back, and her lips trembled. Your Majesty, there's something strange about this bronze cauldron. Chu Ning walked to the bronze cauldron and carefully inspected it with a solemn expression. This thing seems to be able to swallow a person's force. Upon hearing this, Chu Luiyue couldn't help but walk over. Once she got close, she felt a sinister aura seeping out from the bronze cauldron. The next moment, that aura enveloped her. It's dangerous. Upon seeing this, Chu Ning immediately wanted to pull Chu Luiyue away. However, Chu Luiyue shook her head and signaled for him to wait for a while. Then, she felt that the force in her body started to stir under the aura's envelopment. She looked at the bronze cauldron. Black and red mixed together, and that aura suddenly became stronger. She knitted her brows. This aura actually wants to forcefully strip my force from my body. She backed away without hesitation. After leaving the bronze cauldron, that aura quickly disappeared as if it had never appeared. However, Chu Luiyue felt a chill in his heart. Just now, she had been greatly affected just by standing at the side, let alone the person who was hanging above the bronze vat. Furthermore, that person's body was riddled with wounds and stained with blood. It was obvious that he had suffered many wounds when he was alive. When his blood dripped onto the wounds, his origin power was naturally harvested even more cleanly. Chu Luiyue was almost certain that that person's origin power had been continuously devoured, and finally died from exhaustion. No, it wasn't just that person. The bones around him should be the same. Chu Ning pulled Chu Luiyue over and heaved a sigh of relief after confirming that she was fine. This bronze cauldron is an item of great evil and great een. You must not go near it. Emperor Jiawen frowned. Chu Ning, what did you say about the bronze cauldron? Chu Ning explained once more. Therefore, this bronze cauldron must have been deliberately placed here by someone to devour the power of other cultivators. As expected, after hearing this, Emperor Jiawen didn't look shocked at all. Instead, he seemed to have confirmed something. I've once heard of something similar in the royal family's secret history. As long as one gathers enough energy, this bronze cauldron can be upgraded to a higher grade yuan instrument. Whoever becomes its owner will be able to obtain all the energy it contains and greatly increase their cultivation level. Emperor Jiawen's words made everyone's hair stand on end. Such a method could be said to be extremely vicious and cruel. And the only person who knows about this. Other than me, only the Empress knows about this. Emperor Jiawen's sentence was like a bolt of lightning that struck them. Everyone looked at the Empress. Chu Luiyue suddenly understood. No wonder Emperor Jiawen's attitude toward the Empress became even worse when he came in and saw the bronze cauldron. It turns out that he had already determined that the Empress did all of this back then. "See, Huijing, I didn't expect you to do such a thing in secret. You're really vicious." Once Emperor Jiawen thought of how he had actually shared a bed with such a woman for so many years, he felt goosebumps all over his body, and he was so disgusted that he wanted to vomit. The Empress's face was dejected, and she couldn't say a single word of rebuttal. Rongjin also panicked and couldn't help but argue. "Father, even if Mother knows about it, it can't prove that she did it. Mother is already the Empress. What benefits does she have by doing this? Yeah, Her Majesty is already the mother of the country. Why isn't she satisfied?" Rongjio suddenly spoke up as he looked down at the mother-son duo, and his eyes were filled with obscurity. Of course, she didn't do this for herself. She did it for the honorable crown prince, brother. Rongjin was shocked. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iYuan. Chapter 374. Rongjio, don't spout nonsense. Rongjin instinctively wanted to retort. "I'm the crown prince, and I'm considered one of the top cultivators. Why do I have to resort to such means? All these years, I've always relied on my own abilities to cultivate, and I've never taken any shortcuts. I've also never used such sinister means. I can swear on my life." Rongjin also swore. He was very clear that in this situation he would be doomed if he didn't quickly extricate himself and his mother from this matter. However, his words seemed very weak in comparison to the Empress's reaction. "See, Huijing, what are your intentions for doing this?" Emperor Jiawen didn't listen to Rongjin at all. He had already confirmed that the Empress did all of this. The tears on the Empress's face had already dried, and only despair was left. Emperor Jiawen glanced at Rongjin and Rongzhen and sneered. "You don't want to say? That's good too. Rongjin and Rongzhen can't escape the blame either. And Rongqi, I must have been blind back then to choose you as the Empress. I even made Rongjin the crown prince. Chuning, Rongjio, immediately search the entire place." "Yes." The duo didn't hesitate at all as they answered in unison. Then they split up and started searching in different directions. Rongzhen wanted to say something but didn't. It seemed like she wanted to stop them, but she just stood there anxiously in the end. Eunuch Min stood behind Emperor Jiawen, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. As it involved the Empress and the rest, this trip was very low-key, and they didn't even bring any guards. They didn't expect such a shocking secret to be exposed. Chu Luiyue looked at the messy scene in front of him and raised his brows slightly as he looked up at the sky. Country Yaochen's sky is finally going to change. When the Empress heard Emperor Jiawen's words, she finally realized something. Emperor Jiawen is planning to punish both her and her son. It's fine if something happens to me, but Rongjin's position as the crown prince can't be snatched away. Seeing that Chu Ning and Rongjio had already started searching inside, she shivered and directly kowtowed to Emperor Jiawen to admit her guilt. "Your Majesty, please forgive me. I know my mistake. You can punish me however you want, but please let my children off. They're all innocent. They didn't know anything about this." She smashed her head on the ground with all her might. With a dull thud, her forehead was soon bleeding profusely. Her makeup had long been ruined by her tears. Coupled with the bright red and sticky blood slowly flowing down from her forehead, she looked even more miserable. Emperor Jiawen was unmoved as if he had heard a joke. "You don't know? Rongzhen is right here, and you're telling me that she doesn't know anything?" The queen was speechless. In actual fact, she didn't know why Rongzhen was here either. She did this very secretly, so Rongjin and the rest didn't know about it, including Rongzhen. Even if she was crazy, she wouldn't send Rongzhen here. But Rongzhen was indeed here. There was no room for argument. Thinking of this, she suddenly felt hatred toward Rongzhen. If it weren't for her, why would Emperor Jiawen find this place? Then he wouldn't have seen everything here. They also wouldn't suspect Rongjin and the rest because of her existence. She looked at Rongzhen and pleaded, "Zhenzhen, Tell your imperial father yourself how you came to be here, okay? Take it that I'm begging you. You don't want your big brother and second brother to suffer with you, right? You can't drag them down with you. Rong Zhen's eyes trembled. Many scenes suddenly appeared in her mind. How familiar was this scene? Ever since I was young, Imperial Mother would say something like this every time I met with something, right? Her eyes seemed to be covered in a layer of fog. Then she lowered her head slightly and said clearly, word by word, "You're right. Imperial Father, it was Imperial Mother who sent me here." The Queen's voice suddenly stopped, and she looked at Rong Zhen in disbelief. Mother said that this was the only way to help me take revenge for Chu Luiyue. Also, she could pin Elder Si Meng's death on them. Every word Rong Zhen said made the Queen's eyes widen. After hearing this, she was completely dazed. Soon after, the Empress suddenly realized something and screamed, "You're wrong. Your Majesty! Everything she said is fake. It's all fake. Don't believe her." Emperor Zhou glanced at her and nonchalantly said, "You're saying that your biological daughter is framing you?" The Queen felt very aggrieved, but she didn't know what to say. She also didn't know why Rong Zhen would say this. Emperor Zhou stepped forward and asked, "Rong Zhen, did you just say that Si Meng died in your mother's hands?" Rong Zhen shuddered and lightly pointed at the bronze vat before quickly retracting her hand as if she were afraid of something. However, this action was clear enough. She was clearly saying that Si Meng had already died in the bronze vat. "I almost forgot that he's a stage 5 warrior. Taking away such a strong warrior's strength is naturally twice the result with half the effort." Chu Luiyue silently sized Rong Zhen up. "I only left for 10 days, so why did so many things happen in the Imperial City? If I didn't clearly remember that I killed Si Meng, I would have really believed Rong Zhen's previous words." The Queen's face flushed red and white, and she was about to argue. "Your Majesty! Father!" Chu Ning and Rong Jiu came back one after another. The duo's expressions were strange. Emperor Zhouen's heart sank. "What's the matter?" Chu Ning and Rong Jiu looked at each other and seemed hesitant. After a moment, Chu Ning cupped his fists. "Your Majesty, there are many skeletons buried in the backyard." Rong Jiu hurriedly added, "There are more or less some scattered bones hidden in the various rooms in this yard. Roughly looking, there are about 100 people." Dead silence. Even Chu Luiyue couldn't help but frown. When she saw the bronze vat, she thought that there must be more than just a few skeletons here. However, she didn't expect there to be so many. Most of those people are cultivators. There haven't been any missing persons cases in the Imperial City all these years, so these people should have been brought in from outside the Imperial City," said Chu Ning solemnly. Emperor Zhou took a deep breath in and stared at the Queen. "Si Huijing, you can't do all of this by yourself. Tell me, who's helping you? The Si family?" Hearing Emperor Zhou mention the Si family, the Queen immediately shook her head out of reflex. "No, I did all of this by myself. I was blinded for a moment. I'm willing to use my death to atone for my sins. I only beg your Majesty to let Rong Jin, Rong Qi, and the Si family off." Rong Jin finally couldn't help but say, "Mother, what are you doing? You didn't do this, right? Who's the one harming you? Just say it, Pack." The Queen actually slapped Rong Jin harshly. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iYuan. Chapter 375. Rong Jin was stunned by the slap. The Empress's slap was very harsh, and it directly caused half of Rong Jin's face to swell up. Her palm was slightly numb, and her heart trembled when she saw Rong Jin's dazed and hurt expression. "If I wasn't forced, why would I bear to hit my most beloved son?" "But you don't have the right to speak," hollered the Empress. Then she broke free from Rong Jin, knelt forward, and begged, "Your Majesty, I won't complain no matter how you punish me. I'm the only one who did all this." Emperor Zhouen's eyes were filled with mockery. "Didn't you deny it previously? Why are you admitting it so readily now? You just won't cry until you see the coffin and won't turn back until you hit the wall." Seeing that all the evidence was in front of her and that she couldn't argue, She finally admitted it. Moreover, he actually wanted to take full responsibility and put all the blame on himself. Your cultivation talent is average, so this bronze cauldron definitely wasn't prepared for you, right? How many people in this world can make you spend so much effort on it? As he spoke, Emperor Jiawen's gaze landed on Rong Jin. Rong Jin shuddered. He didn't know why, but he also felt guilty. He wasn't stupid. When he found out about the bronze cauldron's use, he had already noticed something. After seeing the Empress's reaction, it would be a joke if he still couldn't guess who it was prepared for. Even if he didn't know anything about it before, he still shuddered when he thought about how hundreds of cultivator skeletons were hidden in this yard. The Empress choked and couldn't say anything. Emperor Jiawen closed his eyes. Bring the Empress and Rongjin back to the palace. Without my permission, they're not allowed to leave the palace. As for Rongjin, go back to Crown Prince Mansion. Right? And Rongqi, tell him to stay in King Ping's residence. When this matter is completely investigated, I'll punish them one by one. Then, Emperor Jiawen angrily waved his sleeves and turned to leave. Eunuch Min hurriedly followed him and didn't dare to say anything. Chu Ning heaved a sigh of relief and patted Chu Liuyue's arm. Go back and have a good rest. Now, this matter had completely nothing to do with him and his daughter. However, as the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Guards, he still had to follow His Majesty to continue investigating. Chu Liyue gently nodded. Father, don't worry. You can take good care of herself. Only then was Chu Ning at ease. He turned around and walked to Rongzhen. Fifth Princess, please. Rongzhen looked at the Empress hesitantly. Mother, scram. This consort doesn't have a daughter like you. The Empress suddenly cursed. Rongzhen's already pale face turned even paler. Her lips moved, but in the end she said nothing and turned to leave. When she passed by Chu Liyue, her head was still lowered, as if she did not notice Chu Liyue's existence. Fourth Princess. Chu Liyue suddenly called out to her. Rongzhen then stopped abruptly and looked up at her. Upon seeing Chu Liyue, Rongzhen instinctively knitted her brows and revealed a look of disgust. However, just as she was about to speak, fear flashed across her heart for some reason. Inexplicably, she swallowed back the words in her throat. Faced with her series of subtle reactions, Chu Liyue's eyes flashed, and he vaguely had a guess in his heart. She did not say anything else and gave Chu Ning a reassuring smile. However, Rongzhen was scared and quickly left. On the other side, Rongjio stood in front of the Empress and Rongjin, quietly waiting for the two of them. He seemed to be very patient and did not say much as he stood at the side and waited. From time to time, he even glanced at the two of them as if he was having fun. Nobody knew that he had been waiting for this day for too long. Now that he could finally see the Empress in such a pathetic state, he naturally had to seize the opportunity. Rongjin noticed his gaze, and it was as if the fire in his heart had been ignited. Rongjio, you did it on purpose, didn't you? You just wanted to make a joke out of us. Are you satisfied now? Rongjio lightly said. Imperial brother, what are you talking about? I'm just waiting to send the two of you back. Father has already given the order, so I naturally have to follow it. Rongjin clenched his fists tightly. Don't think that I don't know what you're thinking. Isn't it because of your lowly birth mother? You have been harboring hatred for us for more than a day or two. One day, I'll definitely make you pay back double. Rongjio's gaze turned cold, and intense murderous intent spread. Crown Prince, if you have the time, you should think about how to get out of this hopeless situation. The Empress's position can't be kept, and Rongjin isn't any better. This time, it will even implicate the Xi family. You can't even protect yourself, yet you still want to take revenge? What a joke. Rongjin almost shattered his molars before he finally suppressed the hatred in his heart. Mother, let's go. They had to think of another way. Rongjin supported the Empress and walked in front. Rongjio paused and looked at Situ Xingqian. Eldest Princess Situ, are you coming along or? Situ Xingqian's face was like a frozen mask, and it was awkward and terrible. She didn't expect things to develop to such a stage. Wasn't everything fine before? Why did the Empress and Crown Prince's situation become so precarious after I left the palace? What should I do? I won't follow you, Situ Xingqian said with difficulty. Situ Xingqian forced herself to say this, but it was too late for regrets. If I knew this would happen, I definitely wouldn't have set a marriage agreement with Rong Jin. This situation can't be salvaged. This isn't very good, right? Eldest Princess Situ, you just got engaged to the Crown Prince. Now that the Crown Prince is in trouble, isn't it equivalent to running away? Not only the Crown Prince, but many people will be very disappointed, right? Chu Luiwei crossed her arms and lazily said. Situ Xingqian glanced at her, and hatred quickly flashed across her eyes. Chu Luiwei is clearly doing this on purpose. I'd better not. After all, this matter is very serious. Even though I'm engaged to the Crown Prince, I'm still considered an outsider. As country Xing Luo's eldest princess, it's really not appropriate for me to continue being involved in this matter. At this point, Situ Xingqian was still very particular with her words as she easily separated herself from this matter. It was as if she had forgotten that it was because she testified that she once saw Chu Luiwei and Rong Jin together that she incited the Empress and Rong Jin to criticize Chu Luiwei in front of Emperor Zhou. Chu Luiwei smiled and nodded. Eldest Princess Situ, you're right. However, I originally thought that you and the Crown Prince must be in love with each other since you got engaged so quickly. When you saw that he was in trouble, you would definitely step forward. It seems like I'm thinking too much. Situ Xingqian's expression became even more awkward. Rong Jin, who was walking in front, suddenly reacted as he turned around and rushed to Situ Xingqian, grabbing her hand. Xingqian, you're the only one who can help me now. Go and ask your father to step forward, he'll definitely let you off. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 376. Situ Xingqian flung Rong Jin's hand away without hesitation. Rong Jin was shocked. Xingqian? Wasn't she smiling at me with gentle eyes previously? Why did she suddenly become so cold in the blink of an eye? He even saw a flash of disgust in her eyes. Situ Xingqian hid her smile and gently said, Prince, don't misunderstand. Your Highness, please don't misunderstand. It's not that I don't want to help. It's just that this matter is of great importance. His Majesty might not be willing to let others know about it. If I rashly ask for Father's help, it might make His Majesty even angrier. Upon hearing this, Rong Jin also hesitated. Situ Xingqian's words made sense. Now, Imperial fathers seem to have determined that this matter was done by Imperial Mother. In the future, it was very likely that they would be held accountable and even the Xi family might not be spared. This isn't just a family scandal. If this news gets out, the entire country Yao Chen's royal family's reputation will be destroyed completely. But other than this, he really couldn't think of any other solution. Then what should we do? Rong Jin had never seen Emperor Zhou so angry. Xingqian, you must think of a way to help me. We're already engaged now. If anything happens to me and Mother... Situ Xingqian's intestines were about to turn green with regret. If I knew that things would turn out like this, I wouldn't have replied to Rong Jin's letter no matter what. She pretended to think for a while and said, Prince, don't worry. This matter hasn't been settled yet. This matter had not been settled yet, so there was still room for negotiation. Why don't I go back to Xing Luo first and discuss with Father before we see how to solve this? I must leave this troublesome place as soon as possible. Once I go back, I'll immediately tell Father to cancel my engagement with Rong Jin. Rong Jin didn't know what Situ Xingqian was thinking and only thought that she agreed to ask her father for help. Hence, he was very grateful, and even the unhappiness and suspicion he felt when she flung his hand away disappeared completely. Then you must be quick. I'll wait for your news, said Rong Jin, and his expression changed slightly. Xingqian, only you're willing to help me. Situ Xingqian suppressed the disgust in her heart and smiled as she urged him. Rest assured, Your Highness. Her Majesty the Empress is still waiting for you over there. Hurry up and go. What happened today must have had a great impact on her. You must take good care of her. Warmth flooded Rong Jin's heart as he looked at Situ Xingqian gratefully. He had never felt that she was so moving before. He couldn't suppress the impulse in his heart and suddenly pulled Situ Xingqian into his embrace. Situ Xingqian was shocked by his actions and almost wanted to hit him. "Xingqian, I promise you, once this is over, we'll get married." Rong Jin enunciated every word clearly. Situ Xingqian's body froze. If it weren't for the people watching at the side, she would have long pushed Rong Jin away. She closed her eyes and suppressed her anger. "Your Highness, now is not the time to talk about this. Let's deal with the Empress first." Upon hearing this, Rong Jin finally let go of her and looked at her intently. "Then, everything depends on you." Then, Rong Jin turned around and left. Situ Xingqian felt as if ants were crawling all over her body, and she almost screamed out loud. After waiting for those people's figures to disappear with much difficulty, she hurriedly said to Rong Jiao, "Third Prince, I'm sorry. I don't want to disturb His Majesty anymore, so I'll take my leave." After saying that, he walked out. Rong Jiao raised his voice. "Eldest Princess Situ, isn't this a bit too rude? Why don't I send someone to send you back?" Situ Xingqian acted as if she didn't hear anything as she hurriedly left. Very quickly, only Chu Luiyue and Rong Jiao were left in the yard. Chu Luiyue bowed to Rong Jiao. "Thank you, Your Highness." If it weren't for Rong Jiao's interference, Chu Ning definitely wouldn't have been able to avoid punishment, and the heptagon wouldn't have appeared. However, Rong Jiao looked at Chu Luiyue in deep thought. "You don't have to thank me. We just have our own needs." Then he lifted his feet and left. Chu Luiyue raised his brows. "Previously, I didn't realize that Rong Jiao is quite interesting. At the very least, he's honest enough. But, judging from his previous reaction, he didn't seem to know what was going on here." Her eyes sparkled. "Previously, I didn't hide Rong Zhen here, but she appeared here for no reason these 2 days and was coincidentally seen by Rong Jiao. The most important thing is that Rong Zhen's memory is in a mess. She clearly doesn't remember everything that happened in the forest outside the imperial city and remembers that the Empress sent her here. Also, Meng, he clearly died in front of me, but I've completely remembered it wrong. If it weren't for Rong Zhen's words, Emperor Jiawen definitely wouldn't have confirmed the Empress's guilt so easily. In the entire imperial city, there should only be one person who can do this. Rong Xiao." Chu Luiyue lightly pouted. "Yesterday, I stayed at Rong Xiao's place for quite a long time, but Rong Xiao didn't even mention this matter. Who would have thought that all of this was controlled by Rong Xiao, who never showed himself from the start to the end?" Even Rong Zhen sighed when she recalled the series of developments. "Rong Xiao's schemes are really deeper than I thought. However, this feeling of having someone to deal with the aftermath and devising strategies to solve all problems seems pretty good." Chu Luiyue's lips curved up, and she turned around to look at the bronze cauldron as she fell into deep thought. What exactly does the Empress want to do with this thing? Does she really just want to help Rong Jin raise his cultivation level? But even if Rong Jin relies on himself to cultivate, there shouldn't be much of a problem. If more than 100 people died here, it means that the Empress has been doing this since a long time ago. What exactly is she doing? Suddenly, a thought flashed across Chu Luiyue's mind. Previously, Rong Zhen mentioned a secret about Rong Jin. Could it be related to that? Xi family. In the martial arts arena, the Xi family's younger generation was diligently cultivating. Xi Yi stood below the arena and gave them pointers from time to time. One of the biggest reasons why the Xi family could become the leader of the 4 big families was that the Xi family had plenty of fresh blood. These young men and women in their teens and 20s were all very outstanding. Compared to the other families, the Xi family was especially outstanding in this aspect. Even though they couldn't compare to Xi Ting, Xi Yi was already very satisfied. Suddenly, a guard rushed in from outside with a hurried expression. "Family head. His Majesty is urgently summoning you." Xi Yi was dazed. "Why would His Majesty suddenly summon me to the palace at this time? Do you know what's going on?" The guard shook his head, but his expression was a little nervous. "Eunuch Min is waiting outside. He seems to be quite anxious." Xi Yi knitted his brows. Seeing the guard's reaction, it doesn't seem to be as simple as anxious. he said in a low voice. Got it? I'll go now. Digression. I slept at 3 p.m., was disturbed by a mosquito for more than an hour in the morning, and my period came to visit. I broke my phone. Please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 377. Si walked out and happened to see Si Ting return. Greetings, master. Si Ting cupped his fists and bowed. His chiseled face was a little tense. Si saw his expression and found it strange. Si Ting, shouldn't you be at the academy today? Why are you back now? Si Ting hesitated for a moment. I heard that something happened in the palace. What happened? Why didn't I know? Si was even more confused. He had been sending people to contact the palace. If something really happened, he should be the first to know. How did Si Ting know that he was at Tianlu Academy? Also, it doesn't look good. Si Ting looked at him and clenched his fists. Chu Luiwei didn't go to the academy today. He was summoned to the palace. So what? Si Yi realized something the moment he spoke, and his expression changed. You're saying that it has something to do with the fourth princess? Si Ting nodded. I felt that something was amiss, so I came back to take a look. I saw Eunuch Min standing at the door. Si Ting pursed his lips. Eunuch Min's expression wasn't good. At least, he had never seen such an expression on Eunuch Min's face after meeting him so many times. Also, this was clearly directed at the Si family. Si Ye's heart gradually sank. Since the fourth princess was involved, His Majesty must have found out that they were secretly searching for Rongzhen. Si Meng might have been exposed as well. He hurriedly patted Si Ting's shoulder. I'll go to the palace to take a look first. You stay at home. If anything happens, you'll be in charge of everything in the Si family. As he spoke, he took out a token and stuffed it into Si Ting's hands. Si Ting frowned. What had happened to make the patriarch so nervous? He even gave me the token that represents the Si family's master? Master, I can't take this. You should take it. Si Ye's expression was very stern, and he didn't allow any rejection. Si Ting exchanged glances with him and suddenly realized that the current situation might be more troublesome and dangerous than he had imagined. He finally held the token tightly and nodded. Don't worry. I'll protect the Si family. Only then did Si Yi feel more at ease. He took a long look at Si Ting before turning to leave. Si Ting looked at his back. For some reason, the uneasiness in his heart started to spread. On the other side, Si Yi followed Eunuch Min into the palace in a hurry. Along the way, he had tried several times to find out what was going on, but Eunuch Min was very tight-lipped and refused to divulge any information. This made Si Yi even more certain of his guess. Something must have happened to the Empress. Otherwise, Eunuch Min would not have such an attitude. The two of them were silent the entire way. By the time they reached the imperial study, countless thoughts had already flashed through Si Ye's mind. Si Yi looked around without batting an eyelid. He immediately realized that the guards in the imperial study were much stricter than before. The overall atmosphere was also more solemn and dignified than before. His heart felt like it was hanging in the air, and he felt extremely uncomfortable. Eunuch Min stepped forward alone and said respectfully, Your Majesty, Master Si has arrived. Emperor Jiawen's cold voice came from the imperial study. Let him in. Eunuch Min looked at Si Yi and took a step back. Master Si, this way please. Si Yi took a deep breath in and tidied his clothes before walking forward and pushing the door open to enter. Once he walked in and saw the scene inside, Si Ye's heart harshly skipped a beat. In the spacious and quiet imperial study, Emperor Jiawen was sitting behind the table. The booklets, brushes, and ink on the table were all swept to the floor, and it was a mess. The Empress, Si Huijing, was kneeling in front of him. Her extravagant palace gown was filled with dirt, and her usually neatly combed hair was also very messy. Her face was tear-stained, and her eyes were red and swollen. She knelt there, and her entire body was filled with despair and pain. Si Yi had never seen her in such a pathetic state. Her Majesty? He couldn't help but shout as he hurriedly walked forward. But very quickly, he realized that Emperor Joan was still in the study. He hurriedly stopped in his tracks, turned around, and looked at Emperor Joan. He suppressed the waves in his heart and bowed. "See ye greets your majesty." When the empress saw him, her dazed eyes moved, and her expression was very strange. It was as if she wanted to cry, but she couldn't cry anymore. She had cried for half her life, and she had almost cried dry today. However, this didn't make Emperor Jiawen's heart soften at all. Emperor Jiawen looked at Siyi with a heavy gaze. "Siyi, do you know why I called you over?" Siyi only felt a strong pressure coming over him. He knelt down almost without thinking. "I don't know. Please enlighten me, your majesty." "You don't know? Don't you know that the Xi family was secretly searching for Rongzhen's whereabouts?" Emperor Jiawen's voice was like a heavy hammer that harshly slammed down. Siyi clenched his fists tightly. As expected, His Majesty already knows. He immediately placed his hands on the floor and heavily knocked his forehead on the floor. "I know my mistake. Please punish me, your majesty." "You know your mistake? To think that I thought you were loyal to me. I didn't expect you to secretly work with the Empress and lie to me for so many years. You already knew about Ximeng's matter, right? See, you're really something." The more Emperor Joan spoke, the angrier he got. He actually picked up the remaining teacup beside him and suddenly threw it at Siyi. Bang! The teacup harshly landed in front of Siyi. The shards flew everywhere, and two of them quickly scratched Siyi's face, leaving bloody marks. However, Siyi didn't dare to move as he knelt even more respectfully. "Your Majesty, I know my mistake, but all of this has nothing to do with Her Majesty. Back then, I was worried that Her Majesty couldn't protect herself in the palace, so I specially arranged for Ximeng. Also, regarding the fourth princess's disappearance, Her Majesty was afraid that you'd be too worried, so she wanted me to help. She didn't hide it on purpose. No matter what, I'm willing to bear all the consequences." Upon hearing this, Emperor Jiawen sneered. "Bear all the consequences? Do you have the right? Siyi, you don't have to act in front of me. Rongzhen didn't even go missing. She was hidden by the Empress." Siyi was shocked and suddenly looked up. "What?" Upon seeing his reaction, Emperor Jiawen squinted his eyes. "What? Your good sister didn't tell you?" Siyi's heart was in a mess and he subconsciously looked at the Empress. "Empress, what's going on?" The Empress lowered her head. She knew that it was useless to say anything now. Rongzhen happened to appear at Heptagon Alley at that time, and she even said those words herself. Emperor Jiawen had already confirmed everything. She spoke in a hoarse voice. "Your Majesty, my brother really knows nothing about this. Please let the Xi family off." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 378. Siyi was confused as he listened at the side. Rongzhen didn't go missing. She was hidden by the Empress? But she didn't look like that at all. Besides, if she really wanted to do this, why would Ximeng die for no reason? He endured the pain and couldn't be bothered to wipe the blood off his face as he hurriedly begged. "Your Majesty, even though I don't know who told you all this, it must be fake. Previously, the fourth princess and Ximeng went missing together, and Ximeng died very quickly. The Empress was worried about the fourth princess's safety, so she found me. I secretly sent people to search the entire imperial city, but they didn't find any traces of the fourth princess. Rongzhen said all this herself. Could she be lying?" Emperor Jiawen's cold words made Siyi swallow his remaining words. He widened his eyes in shock and couldn't recover his senses for a long time. "Rongzhen said it herself? Could it be that Rongzhen has been found?" Looking at Siyi's expression, Emperor Jiawen thought to himself, he really doesn't seem to know about this. Otherwise, his acting skills are too good. Siyi had followed him for many years, so he more or less understood him. If Siyi was really involved in this matter, he definitely wouldn't have such a reaction. Emperor Jiawen's mood finally calmed down a little. As the head of the Xi family, the head of the four major families, Siyi's identity was very important. Unless it was a critical moment, Emperor Jiawen wasn't willing to touch him. If not, the entire imperial city would be shaken. That was also the reason why he chose to deal with such a major matter in such a low-key manner. See, the Empress has already admitted that she killed Si Meng and sent Rongzhen to Heptagon Alley to frame the Chu family. Do you have anything to say about this? Si Yi was dazed. The Empress killed Si Meng? How is this possible? All these years, the Empress trusted and relied on Si Meng a lot. What good does it do to kill him? Besides, why did she send Rongzhen to Heptagon Alley? Hasn't that place been abandoned for many years? Faced with Emperor Jiawen's stern questioning, Si Ye's heart thumped, and he couldn't help but look at the Empress at the side. Empress, is what His Majesty said true? The Empress's face didn't change at all. She just nodded stiffly. She only hoped that the Si family wouldn't be implicated, so even if she wasn't the one who did it, she had to admit it. Moreover, with the bronze cauldron in Heptagon Alley, these matters were nothing. I'm afraid that Emperor Jiawen has already cut me into pieces in his heart. Si Yi was shocked. He asked almost subconsciously, why? The Empress lowered her eyes, seemingly not intending to continue speaking. Emperor Jiawen chided her. Why aren't you saying anything? If you can do it, why can't you say it now? Tell Si Yi what good things you did in Heptagon Alley. Si Yi had never seen Emperor Jiawen so angry before, and he couldn't help but be shocked. Previously, when Si Meng and Rongzhen were mentioned, Emperor Jiawen had been holding it in. Why did he suddenly have such a huge reaction when Heptagon Alley was mentioned? It seems like the Heptagon Alley incident is more intolerable to Emperor Jiawen than Si Meng's existence and hiding Rongzhen. The Empress's pale and cracked lips trembled. Your Majesty, I did all these myself, and it has nothing to do with my brother or the entire Si family. If this matter continues, it will only become more troublesome. Please give me a swift end and end it. Emperor Jiawen chuckled. Now you know how troublesome it is? When you did it back then, did you think that this day would come? It's not impossible for you to end it. You just have to make it clear whether the bronze cauldron was prepared for Rongjin or not. And why are you doing this? Si Yi was confused when he heard this. What bronze cauldron? Why is Rongjin involved in this? The Empress bit her lips tightly. Actually, Emperor Jiawen had asked her this question many times. However, she never admitted it. She knew better than anyone else how much Emperor Jiawen hated the bronze cauldron. Hence, once I admit it, Rongjin will never be able to make a comeback. Thinking of this, her heart was completely drowned in despair. The next moment, she suddenly slammed against the wall at the side. Emperor Jiawen stood up angrily. Stop her! Si Yi had long rushed over when the Empress moved and blocked in front of her. The Empress harshly slammed her head into Si Ye's arms. Don't. Si Yi let out a muffled groan as a sweet and fishy taste surged into his mouth. The Empress actually really wants to kill me. She used all her strength this time. What are you doing? Si Yi was angry and anxious as he directly shouted the Empress's name. The Empress grabbed his hand and anxiously begged. Brother, kill me. Quickly kill me. As long as she died, everything would be over. But how could Si Yi bear to do it? What exactly happened to you? Emperor Jiawen looked on coldly at the side. Empress, do you think I can't do anything to you if you don't say anything? Then he suddenly raised his voice and shouted. Guards, bring me a brush and ink. He had smashed most of the things on the table and they couldn't be used anymore. However, the imperial study didn't lack these things at all. Eunuch Min hurriedly came in from outside as if he didn't see the disheveled Si Yi and the Empress on the ground. He silently walked to the other side, took out a new brush, and presented it to Emperor Jiawen. Then he very consciously started to grind the ink. Emperor Jiawen picked up the brush and nonchalantly glanced at the Empress. I think you can't continue to be the Empress. As for Rongjin, with a mother like you, what kind of son can he teach? He can't take on such a big responsibility. I should have removed him long ago. The Empress suddenly realized that Emperor Jiawen didn't just want to remove the Empress, he also wanted to remove the Crown Prince. In her panic, she couldn't help but scream. Your Majesty, you mustn't. Rongjin just got engaged with Situ Xingqian. If you remove the crown prince now, how are you going to explain to country Xing Luo? Emperor Zhouwen paused in his actions and sneered. I see. No wonder they're so fearless. They actually thought of how to get away with it right from the start. It turns out that Rongjin successfully fought for the marriage agreement with Situ Xingqian just for this day. Emperor Zhouwen hated himself for being blind for so many years. He actually let such a vicious mother and son lie to him for so long. But I do want to see if country Xing Luo will continue to maintain the marriage agreement between Situ Xingqian and Rongjin after knowing about this. Country Xing Luo. Situ Xingqian returned to the palace at the fastest speed possible and recounted everything that had happened in detail. However, country Xing Luo's Emperor Xiankong, Situ Yan, kept quiet for a long time before shaking his head. Xingqian, this marriage agreement can't be cancelled. Digression, I forgot how to address the Emperor of country Xing Luo and his name. Using this chapter as the basis, I'll change the previous chapters together. It was hard to believe that in the early summer when mosquitoes appeared, I used 4 heating pads in one day. Mobile users, please browse and read, a better reading experience from love. Chapter 379. Your Highness, this move is really ingenious. Chu Luiyue looked at the chessboard in front of her, but the black chess piece in her hand didn't move. Almost all my black chess pieces are blocked. Rong Xiu sat opposite her quietly. Upon hearing this, his thin red lips curved up slightly. You clearly have another path to take, right? Chu Luiyue could obviously tell. But even if I take this step and barely break out of my current predicament, Your Highness, didn't you already prepare an inescapable trap? Since I'm going to lose anyway, there's no point in taking this extra step. Chu Luiyue threw the chess piece back into the chess pot and raised her hands. I admit defeat. Looking at her obedient manner, Rong Xiu raised his brows slightly. You're not focused. What are you thinking about? As he spoke, he started to put away the chess pieces. Chu Luiyue looked at his slow movements and couldn't help but wrinkle her nose. Actually, even if she was focused, she would barely be able to fight Rong Xiu to a draw. If they really wanted to compare, Rong Xiu was indeed better. Rong Xiu slowly said, this move seems to be very simple. This step may seem meaningless, but there will be people who will take it. Chu Luiyue snorted. It's just a waste of effort. Not only did Situ Yan not cancel Rongjin and Situ Xingqian's marriage agreement, but he even took the initiative to ask for mercy. Even if His Majesty was furious and couldn't wait to punish the Empress and Crown Prince, he had to give Situ Yan some face. Chu Luiyue had long expected that Situ Yan wouldn't cancel the marriage agreement easily, but she didn't expect him to help so decisively. It could be seen that Situ Yan thought highly of Rongjin. Rong Xiu smiled lightly. If the problem could be solved so easily, it wouldn't have dragged until today. Chu Luiyue suddenly leaned forward, placed her hands on the chessboard, and stared at Rong Xiu. Your Highness, did you already know that Situ Yan would help? Rong Xiu raised his eyes slightly and glanced at Chu Luiyue's face with a faint smile. Didn't you already know? Between the two of them, there seemed to be some kind of ambiguous air flowing slowly. Chu Luiyue looked at Rong Xiu thoughtfully. Of course she knew. However, the reason why she made such a guess was purely because she knew something. But what about Rong Xiu? He knew about it too? Chu Luiyue paused. Because of Situ Yan's help, His Majesty hasn't deposed the Crown Prince yet. Even the Empress hasn't been officially deposed. However, many people had already sensed that something wasn't right. Now, all kinds of guesses were running rampant, and people's hearts were shaken. His Majesty ordered a thorough investigation of Heptagon Alley, but there hasn't been any progress. Your Highness, what exactly do you plan to do? Rong Xiu kept all the chess pieces and looked at Chu Luiyue's curious face. He couldn't help but lower his head and kiss her forehead lightly. Even though taking an extra step won't win you, it will make it more exciting. Besides, that way, you'll be able to win more happily. Crown Prince Mansion. As Rongjin was under house arrest again, the entire Crown Prince Mansion's atmosphere became very solemn. Everyone was dejected and lifeless. They didn't have the smug look that the crown prince had when he was in the limelight. Who would have thought that the crown prince that everyone envied would end up in such a state? Even though His Majesty hadn't given any orders, rumors were spreading in the imperial city. Everyone said that even the empress was under house arrest this time, and it was only a matter of time before the crown prince was deposed. Chu Xianmin sat in her room. It was already late autumn, and the weather gradually turned cold. Her residence was cold and cheerless, like a cellar in the dead of winter. Her hands slowly touched the veil on her face. Even though she was the only one here, she didn't dare to show her face. This was because even she was afraid of seeing that face. Back then, when had she ever thought that she would end up like this? She thought for a long time and finally stood up. She heard that Situ Xingshan was visiting Crown Prince Mansion today, so she had to go and greet her. When she walked outside, the road was terrifyingly quiet. It wasn't much better than her place. She walked all the way to the front hall. After walking for a distance, she finally saw people on the road. Most of them were servants, but these people only bowed to her hastily when they saw her and hurriedly left. Chu Xianmin couldn't help but mock herself. When these people met her in the past, they would think of ways to tease her. Now, they couldn't even be bothered to do that. She could vaguely hear those people's whispers. I really don't know what eldest Princess Situ wants. Now that the Crown Prince and Her Majesty are under house arrest, they will be deposed sooner or later. She still hasn't cancelled her marriage agreement with the Crown Prince. Isn't she finding trouble for herself? Who knows? Maybe she's infatuated with him and is willing to die for him? I don't think so. You didn't see how eldest princess treated the crown prince. I just went in to serve tea, but I didn't see any smile on her face. She said that she's here to visit the crown prince, but anyone who saw her would think that she was forced to come. Who can force her? She's the apple of country Xing Luo's emperor's eye. Anyway, with her around, His Majesty won't do anything to the crown prince for the time being. But I think we should find another way out. This crown prince's palace, it was hard to say when it would completely change. I heard that His Majesty has been treating the third prince very well recently. He seems to be planning to make him a prince. Chu Xianmin clenched her teeth and walked forward. In the front hall, Rong Jin and Situ Xingshan sat opposite each other. After experiencing the past few days, Rong Jin had lost a lot of weight and looked very haggard. Even his last bit of energy was almost depleted. He was worried about the Empress and himself. He was anxious for a few days and nights, so he naturally became like this. Luckily, he still kept his position as the Crown Prince. Xingshan, I really don't know how to thank you. Rong Jin looked at Situ Xingshan in front of him with a face full of gratitude. I knew you wouldn't sit by and do nothing. In Rong Jin's opinion, Situ Yen must have been willing to help because Situ Xingshan had begged him. Hence, he treasured Situ Xingshan even more in his heart. However, Situ Xingshan didn't think so. Being stared at by Rong Jin with such a gaze, she felt goosebumps all over her body, and she almost couldn't sit still. If it weren't for father's orders, I wouldn't have come no matter what. Your Highness, you don't have to be so polite. This is what I should do. Situ Xingshan almost clenched her teeth and spat out this sentence. However, Rong Jin didn't notice her thoughts at all as he sighed deeply and sighed. It's a pity that father thinks that mother is guilty and won't let me see her. I also don't know what's going on with her. Situ Xingshan was impatient to listen to this. She recalled her former father's instructions and asked softly in a seemingly unintentional manner, Your Highness, His Majesty is doing this because of Heptagon Alley. Do you know what's going on in there? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 380. Rong Jin knitted his brows. I don't know either. Mother didn't mention it to me before. That day, it was my first time at Heptagon Alley. As for the so-called bronze cauldron and the hundreds of skeletons, he had never heard of them before. Situ Xingshan knitted her brows undetectably and continued to ask, unwilling to give up. But if Her Majesty really did it, it should be for you. I said I don't know. Rong Jin retorted in disgust. Besides, Mother is just a woman in the palace. How can she do such a thing? Those skeletons belonged to cultivators, and there were even some outstanding warriors among them. However, Mother's cultivation talent was average, and she stayed in the palace for many years. With her abilities alone, it was impossible for her to complete this series of actions. In Rong Jin's eyes, all of this was Rong Jiao and the rest's slander. Let's not talk about this and talk about Rong Zhen. Rong Zhen did go missing back then, and Mother was very worried about it. She even looked for him several times to discuss countermeasures. If Mother really sent Rong Zhen to Heptagon Alley long ago, why did she have to act in front of me? Wasn't that a waste of time and energy? In Rong Jin's impression, Mother had always trusted him. Since he was young, he knew that he was Mother's hope, and he carried her heavy burden. Mother could give up everything for him. Even if Mother hid it from the entire world, she would definitely treat him honestly. Hence, he never believed that Mother did those things from the start to the end. Father, you're just temporarily blinded. When I find out the truth, everything will naturally come to light. Rong Jin clenched his teeth. Upon hearing this, Situ Xingqian sneered in her heart. Blinded? Rong Jin could only say this to himself. The Empress's reaction that day was enough to explain the problem. Other than Rong Zhen's strange appearance, everything else was clearly related to the Empress. Situ Xingqian rubbed the teacup but didn't drink it. She looked down at her reflection in the tea, and her eyes were cold. However, her voice was still as gentle as water. Your Highness, you're right. I don't believe in those things either. If not, you wouldn't have come out to help, right? Given the current situation, you have to think of a solution as soon as possible. If not, Her Majesty's life in the palace won't be good. Rong Jin knitted his brows tightly. Then tell me, what should we do? Father refuses to see me now. Does your Highness know that Lord Chu Ning and the third prince are investigating Heptagon Alley together? If they really found out something, wouldn't it be easy for His Majesty to convict him? In other words, the future of you and the Empress is now in their hands. How could I not know that? Rong Jin rubbed his face in frustration. Let's not talk about Chu Ning, but Rong Jiao has a deep grudge against me and my son. He will definitely take this opportunity to secretly do something. Your Highness, in my opinion, the crux of this matter lies in Heptagon Alley. I believe that those things were definitely not done by the Empress, but she definitely knows something, don't you think? Rong Jin didn't say anything. If Her Majesty tells you everything she knows, then you'll be able to deal with the current situation better. So, why don't you go and consult the Empress? Rong Jin pondered for a long time and felt that this was indeed a good idea. But the most troublesome thing was, but Imperial Mother and I can't see each other right now, so how can I ask? Situ Xingqian's lips curved up slightly, and she revealed a gentle smile. You forgot that Xingqian can enter the palace. Chu Xianmin, who had walked to the door, suddenly stood still when she heard this. Then, she heard Rong Jin's excited voice. Xingqian, you're indeed the best woman in the world. It's my great fortune to be able to marry you as my crown princess. Chu Xianmin felt as if countless needles were pricking her heart, and it was very painful. She clenched her fists tightly, and many thoughts flashed across her mind. Finally, as if she had made up her mind, her gaze became firm, and she turned to leave. Chu Luiwei came to Mu Qinghe's residence again. Just as he walked to the door, he heard a joyful chirp. Chu Luiwei looked up and saw Hong Yao excitedly flapping its wings and flying over. Even though they had not seen each other for half a month, Chu Luiwei missed Hong Yao quite a bit. Seeing her welcoming him so enthusiastically, he couldn't help but smile. Hong Yao, have you been obedient recently? Hong Yao flew one round around Chu Luiwei and flapped its wings vigorously. Chu Luiwei even saw a faint layer of green fire. This was clearly an affirmative answer. Chu Luiwei smiled until his eyes turned into crescents. Don't worry. I didn't forget to bring you a gift. Hong Yao chirped happily again. Chu Luiwei took out her cosmic bag and was about to take out the item when she suddenly felt a gaze on her. It was almost tangible. She paused in her actions and looked up. Jian Fengqi crossed his arms and leaned against the door frame as he looked at her with interest. How strange. Hong Yao isn't your fiend. Why do you care so much about it? Chu Liyue's eyes twitched. It's been more than 10 days. Why hasn't this fellow left yet? As if he had seen through Chu Liyue's thoughts, Jian Fengqi smiled flirtatiously and proudly. It's easy to invite me here, but it's not so easy to ask me to leave. Chu Liyue tried her best to look calm and polite as she curtsied. Greetings, young Master Jian. Jian Fengqi suddenly said, do you know that Mu Qinghe only allows Hong Yao to accept gifts from one person? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 381. Chu Liyue put away the Qingkuan bag with a calm expression and smiled faintly. How would Lu Yu know about this kind of thing? Jian Fengqi's gaze fell on her hand. He raised his chin and smiled carelessly. Actually, that's not important. Anyway, it's all in the past. What did you bring for Hong Yao? Can I have a look? Chu Liyue put the things back into the Qingkuan bag without batting an eyelid. Young Master Jian, you must be joking. It's just some ordinary things. They're not worthy of your attention. Since you said that Vice Admiral Mu only allowed Hong Yao to receive a gift from one person, then I won't embarrass myself here. If I offend you, please forgive me. Hong Yao drooped its head in disappointment and immediately glared at Jian Fengqi. It's all his fault. If this guy hadn't suddenly appeared, it would definitely have gotten the gift. It had been waiting for half a month. Jian Fengqi's lips curled into an evil smile, and his eyebrows were naturally flirtatious. Miss Chu, why are you so nervous? I see that Mu Qinghe thinks quite highly of you. Who knows, maybe he'll make an exception for you. After all, the girl in front of him had a pair of eyes that were so similar to that person's. Chu Liyue didn't want to continue talking about this with Jian Fengqi, so she quietly changed the topic. Thank you for your kindness, young Master Jian. In fact, I came here today to see if Vice Admiral Mu had come back. I came here once a few days ago, but you weren't here at that time. She guessed that Mu Qinghe must have encountered something at that time, because he always kept his promises. Since he said 10 days, there must be some special reasons why he didn't stay here to see her. Jian Fengqi looked at Chu Liyue thoughtfully. For some reason, he always felt that Chu Liyue didn't seem to want to talk to him much. The looming feeling of being despised came back again. How strange. He had always been very popular in front of women. He didn't know how he had offended Chu Liyue to make her treat him like this. It seems like the women of country Yao Chen aren't very friendly to me. He let out a long sigh. Chu Liyue narrowed his eyes and smiled politely. Young Master Jian, please don't misunderstand. I'm just worried that Vice Admiral Mu might have been delayed by something. I'm not displeased with you at all. Perhaps someone else made young Master Jian unhappy? It was obvious that he had suffered a setback somewhere. However, she was also curious. There were not many people who could suppress Jian Fengqi. Jian Fengqi's icy eyes were filled with resentment. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. In the end, he swallowed the words in his throat and turned to walk inside. Forget it, forget it. This young master has never liked to fuss over such things. As he walked, he dragged out his words and spoke lazily. Mu Qinghe, the little girl is looking for you. Chu Liyue inexplicably shuddered. Little girl? This guy must have eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's guts to call her that. Chu Liyue secretly gritted her teeth and made a mental note of Jian Fengqi. She suppressed the unhappiness in her heart and followed him. Jian Fengqi casually waved his hand without turning his head. He's in the backyard. You can go by yourself. After saying that, he strode toward the other side, as if he couldn't be bothered to care about this. Chu Liyue thanked him and walked toward the backyard. Seeing that Jian Fengqi had left, Hong Yao followed again. It circled Chu Liyue and blinked its eyes, unwilling to give up. Since that guy is no longer here, I can give it the present, right? Chu Liyue stared at it and shook her head. Hong Yao no. It was obvious that the only person Jian Fengqi mentioned who could give Hong Yao a present was her, the former Shangguan Yu. In the past, she didn't know about this at all, so she said that she would bring a present for Hong Yao without any scruples. But now that she knew, she naturally couldn't do that anymore. Mu Qinghe had a lot of doubts about her, so she had to be cautious. Seeing her determined expression, Hong Yao lowered its wings in disappointment, landed on the ground, and walked forward step by step listlessly. Chu Luiwei pursed her lips, but she still didn't give in. In fact, she said that she would bring a present for Hong Yao at first just to coax it, but it gradually became a habit. But she never knew that Mu Qinghe would only let Hong Yao accept gifts from her alone. I really don't know what Mu Qinghe is thinking. Suddenly, Hong Yao stopped. Chu Luiwei looked up and saw that in the spacious backyard, Mu Qinghe was practicing with a saber. He said that he was practicing with a saber, but in fact, what he was holding in his hand was just an ordinary 3-inch wooden saber. Although it was just an ordinary wooden saber, in Mu Qinghe's hand, it seemed to be filled with murderous intent. Even though there was still a distance between them, Chu Luiwei could still feel the fierce aura that almost cut everything. Vice Admiral Mu. Chu Luiwei saluted. Mu Qinghe didn't stop, and his wooden saber danced smoothly. Chu Luiwei could even see the black cracks in the void wherever the saber passed. It could be seen that Mu Qinghe's strength was indeed stronger than before. Mu Qinghe's movements were so fast that he left several afterimages in the courtyard. Immediately, he raised his hand and stabbed. The wooden saber in his hand flew out in an instant. Swoosh, swoosh. Those afterimages were pierced one after another. They dissipated with a loud bang. Chu Luiwei knitted her brows unnoticeably. Mu Qinghe didn't seem to be in a good mood. To put it nicely, he didn't show his emotions, but to put it bluntly, he had an icy face. In Chu Luiwei's impression, she had almost never seen him reveal his emotions. But from his appearance just now, it seemed that he had encountered something terrible, but she didn't say anything, just stood quietly by the side and waited. Finally, when the last afterimage was pierced, the wooden saber flew back to Mu Qinghe's hand. He slowly exhaled and looked back at Chu Luiwei. At this time, his eyes were as cold and indifferent as ever, without the slightest fluctuation. Vice Admiral Mu, the last time I came, you weren't here, so… I know. Mu Qinghe didn't wait for Chu Luiwei to finish her explanation and interrupted her. Suddenly, he stared at Chu Luiwei and sized her up. Chu Luiwei blinked and smiled faintly. Vice Admiral Mu, why are you looking at me like that? Mu Qinghe was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, It seems that your trip wasn't in vain. Chu Luiwei was slightly stunned. She didn't break through this time, so where did Mu Qinghe's words come from? Without waiting for her to ask, Mu Qinghe suddenly threw the wooden saber in his hand at Chu Luiwei. Swoosh! The wooden saber was wrapped in an astonishing force, and it went straight for Chu Luiwei. Its speed was so fast that Chu Luiwei didn't have time to dodge. Now, she could either be pierced or brace herself to receive it. Chu Luiwei subconsciously turned sideways, and at the same time, reached out with her right hand. Mu Qinghe's eyes suddenly sharpened. This movement, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 382. Chu Luiwei suddenly paused. Almost at the same time, two figures, one green and one red, quickly appeared in front of Chu Luiwei. They were Hong Yao and Dumpling. Dumpling quickly went forward and went straight for the wooden saber. Its fluffy body easily landed on the wooden saber. In the next moment, it opened its mouth and bit down hard. Crack! With this crisp sound, a large piece of the wooden saber's blade was bitten off by Dumpling. On the other side, Hong Yao flapped its wings and a ball of green flame landed on the wooden saber. With a boom, it burst into flames. Dumpling sensed the movement and turned around to take a look. It saw that the green flame was almost burning its tail. It bared its teeth at Hong Yao angrily. Hong Yao threw it a provocative look. In the next moment, the two of them retreated. The wooden saber turned into a pile of ashes an arm's length away from Chu Luiwei. Dumpling returned to Chu Luiwei's shoulder first and showed its tail to Chu Luiwei. Ow ow! That bird was too hateful. It was almost burned to death. Chu Luiwei looked at it coldly. Yes, it burned 3 of its feathers. If you discovered it a little later, it would have grown back on its own. Dumpling was speechless. The red demon let out 2 clear cries and flapped its wings proudly. It deserved it. It was its fault for being so slow. It hadn't improved at all after such a long time. Dumpling was furious, but when it thought of how it had suffered because it was inferior to Hong Yao, it could only turn around angrily and point its butt at Hong Yao to show its anger. Actually, Chu Luiyue really wanted to criticize Hong Yao for abusing her power for personal revenge, but she knew better in front of Mu Qinghe. Besides, Hong Yao had attacked to help her. She slowly lowered her arm, and the tense muscles all over her body also relaxed. Mu Qinghe's eyes flashed with disappointment. When he saw Chu Luiyue's actions just now, he thought, what is Vice Admiral Mu planning to do? Chu Luiyue didn't seem to notice anything wrong and said with a smile, I'm afraid you've overestimated me. I can't take one of your moves now. It's all thanks to Dumpling and Hong Yao. Mu Qinghe's face was a little cold as he gave Hong Yao a warning look. Hong Yao, who was still smug a moment ago, suddenly froze. It was too anxious just now. It rushed out just like that. Chu Luiyue was a little nervous. It was only when she was about to make a move that she realized that Mu Qinghe was probably doing this to test her. People's instincts were very easy to be exposed. She was already halfway. Mu Qinghe would definitely notice that something was amiss if she fully displayed her movement technique. Luckily, Dumpling and Hong Yao attacked in time. Chu Luiyue lightly patted Dumpling. She felt at ease when she felt the soft and furry touch. Follow me out. Chu Luiyue nodded. Chu Luiyue was dazed. Now. Mu Qinghe glanced at her. Why? Do you have other things to do? Chu Luiyue shook her head. Even if there was, Mu Qinghe probably wouldn't care. After all, nobody dared to offend him here. Even Emperor Zhouwen had to make way for him, let alone others. Mu Qinghe nodded and walked outside. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment but still followed. Vice Admiral Mu, may I ask where we're going? You'll know when we get there. Mu Qinghe's reply was very cold and arbitrary. She clearly didn't give Chu Luiyue any room to bargain. Chu Luiyue knitted her brows. Mu Qinghe has always done things like this, so I'm not surprised. But, if I don't even know where we're going, I'll feel uncomfortable. However, Mu Qinghe clearly didn't intend to explain to me. When they reached the front yard, Jian Fengqi suddenly walked out. Oh, where are you bringing the little girl? He smiled and teased. Mu Qinghe coldly glanced at him. This isn't something you should interfere in. Jian Fengqi raised his hands. This isn't the time for you to invite me over. Mu Qinghe, you're getting better at kicking me to the curb after I've outlived my usefulness. He was clearly just teasing, but Mu Qinghe's expression suddenly stiffened for a moment. Jian Fengqi also seemed to realize something. He coughed and turned his gaze to Chu Luiyue. Miss Chu, there's something I'd like to ask. Please speak, young Master Jian. Jian Fengqi rubbed his chin with one hand and seemed to be in a dilemma. Is this young master ugly? Chu Luiyue thought she heard wrong and slightly widened her eyes. But when she saw Jian Fengqi's thoughtful expression, she was sure that he really did say that. What's wrong with this guy? Who doesn't know that Jian Fengqi's second best skill is alchemy and his first best skill is narcissism? Jian Fengqi's naturally flirtatious eyes and free and unrestrained style. Even Chu Luiyue, who always disliked him, had to admit that Jian Fengqi's charm and appearance were indeed top-notch. Otherwise, how could he come and go freely among the flowers? Young Master Jian is handsome and elegant. Naturally, you have nothing to do with the word ugly. Jian Fengqi's straight brows knitted even tighter. I think so too, but someone said that this young master is ugly. Chu Luiyue asked curiously. I wonder who that person is. What kind of insight is this? Jian Fengqi's gaze became very subtle and his thin lips spat out a name. Mu Hongyu. Chu Luiyue was speechless. It seems that a lot of interesting things have happened while I was away. Jian Fengqi had always been a person who thought highly of himself and was especially confident in his appearance. He had lived for so many years, but this should be the first time that someone called him ugly. No wonder he was so resentful. Unfortunately, according to Mu Hongyu's personality, this kind of person was the last person she liked. This was also because Jian Fengqi had cured the princess consort of Ping Zhang's illness. Mu Hongyu must have said this because she couldn't bear it anymore. One could imagine how much Mu Hongyu didn't like Jian Fengqi. Chu Luiwei came to a realization and comforted him with a smile. Hongyu has always been outspoken. Don't take it to heart. Jian Fengqi was speechless. She didn't seem to be comforting him. I heard from her that there's someone called Rong Xiu who is dozens of times more charming than me? Chu Luiyue's mouth twitched. If she didn't hear wrongly, Rong Xiu? Oh, by the way, she also said that person is your fiancé? Jian Fengqi stared at Chu Luiyue and asked. Only then did Chu Luiyue realize that Jian Fengqi hadn't seen Rong Xiu since he came here. She coughed. Yes. His Highness Prince Li is indeed my fiancé. Jian Fengqi thought for a moment and suddenly walked outside. I'd like to see what kind of person that Rong Xiu is. Chu Luiyue was about to say something when there was a sudden movement from the side. She turned her head to take a look. A long sword suddenly floated in the air. Mu Qinghe was standing on it with a solemn and cold expression. Come up. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 383. Palace. Imperial Study. Emperor Zhouwen looked at the book in his hands, and the more he read, the more tightly he knitted his brows. Finally, he threw the book aside without a sound. Chu Ning, I asked you to search Heptagon Alley with all your might, but you only found these useless things? Chu Ning, who was respectfully standing with his hands by his side, immediately knelt down and said, Your Majesty, Your Majesty. I've already used all my connections and methods, but I can only find out this much. Even though there are hundreds of skeletons in Heptagon Alley, other than recognizing that they're all cultivators, I can't find any other information about their identities. Anything that can reveal their identities has been specially taken care of, and I can't find anything at all. Other than the hanging corpse, the other skeletons don't even have a single piece of clothing on them. The person who did this was clearly very careful. Chu Ning didn't sleep or rest these few days and even dug 3 feet into Heptagon Alley. However, other than piles of skeletons, he really didn't find anything else. Emperor Zhouwen rubbed his glabella in frustration. He knew that this matter wouldn't be so easily investigated, and there was no point in sitting here and being anxious. However, once he thought of the bronze cauldron stained with dried, dark red blood, he would be filled with worry. Chu Ning glanced at Emperor Zhouwen and continued speaking. Refuse to investigate. Her Majesty goes to Heptagon Alley once every 2 months on average, and she's very secretive. She only stays there for a short while, so nobody discovered her after such a long time. Emperor Zhouwen's face darkened. In actual fact, he had personally interrogated the Empress a few times, but the Empress was very tight-lipped. From start to end, she only said that she did everything, but she didn't mention if she prepared it for Rong Jin or why she did it. In the middle, with Emperor Zhouwen's silent approval, his subordinates even tortured the Empress, but they still didn't find any useful clues. Whenever he thought about how the Empress had deceived him for so many years without him noticing, he felt a chill run from the bottom of his feet to his head, causing him to shudder. Knock knock. Your Majesty, the third prince wishes to see you. Eunuch Min carefully said outside. Let him in. Emperor Zhouwen took a deep breath in and looked at Rong Jiu, who pushed the door open and asked, What's the news? Do you have any news? The moment Rong Jiu came in and saw Chu Ning kneeling on the floor, he realized that Chu Ning probably didn't find anything. He first bowed respectfully and then slowly said, I'm sorry. Your son has personally interrogated all the servants in the Empress Palace and obtained some information that might be useful. Emperor Zhouwen finally perked up. Speak. Rong Jiu said, according to the Empress' personal maid, the Empress keeps a box for herself and never allows anyone else to touch it. Every once in a while, the Empress would lock herself in her bedroom. At first, the palace servants didn't think much of it. Later, a eunuch accidentally broke in and finally found that the Empress was inside and seemed to be looking at the things in the box. Emperor Zhouwen pondered for a moment. What kind of box is it? Why does she value it so much? Why didn't I know about it? Rongjio sneered in his heart. Emperor Zhouwen and the Empress didn't have any feelings for each other, especially Emperor Zhouwen. He probably didn't even put 10% of his thoughts on the Empress. If he cared about the Empress before, he wouldn't let the Empress do so many messy things under his nose. The Empress frequently went in and out of Heptagon Alley and kept killing cultivators to accumulate strength for the Bronze Cauldron. Even Emperor Zhouwen didn't know, let alone a small box. It was really too easy to hide it from Emperor Zhouwen. Thinking of this, Rongjio couldn't help but mock himself. It was also because of this that the Empress didn't receive any punishment even after silently killing his mother. Emperor Zhouwen didn't treat his mother any better. Rongjio suppressed his emotions and looked calm. I didn't ask about this. After all, the palace servants don't dare to ask about the Empress's things. But the eunuch who accidentally discovered this incident fell into the lake and drowned not long after. After that, the Empress's palace servants kept their mouths shut about this incident. This time, he had to use some tricks to finally get the answer he wanted. I think that if we can find that box, many problems can be solved. Emperor Zhouwen looked solemn. You're saying that the box has something to do with Heptagon Alley? This is only your son's guess. In the current situation where there are no other clues, this is the only feasible path. Emperor Zhouwen thought for a while and felt that this made sense. Since this is the case, Rongjio, go find the Empress and ask her to hand the item over. Rongjio hesitated. Father, since Her Majesty values that box so much, she probably won't hand it over easily. Tell her that if she honestly hands it over, I might give Rongjin a chance. If she's stubborn, let her decide what to do. An undetectable cold glint flashed across Rongjio's eyes. Yes, Your Majesty. With that, he quickly excused himself. Emperor Zhouwen looked at Chuning helplessly. Chuning, you have to hurry up on your side. If you really can't do it, start from other areas. Go and check all the people who have close contact with the Empress and Rongjin. Yes. After Chuning left, Emperor Zhouwen then relaxed his body and leaned against the chair. Chuning is good at everything, but he doesn't have enough means. In comparison, Rongjio's work efficiency was much higher. After all, he was trained in the Northwest Army. Thinking of this, Emperor Zhouwen vaguely felt uncomfortable in his heart. In the past, he never thought of leaving the position for Rongjio because he really didn't like this son of his. Besides, his murderous aura was too strong, and it even made Emperor Zhouwen wary sometimes. But now, it seems like Rongjin can't do it. Among the remaining princes, Rongjio actually became the most suitable one. Even if he's cold and murderous, it's better than being weak and useless. What a pity, Emperor Zhouwen sighed as if he was instantly 10 years old. If only Rongjio's health was better. In the Empress's bedroom, the once bustling and prosperous place disappeared in the blink of an eye, and it was now cold and lonely. Only heavy guards were left, trapping the Empress here. When Situ Xingshan arrived here, her heart couldn't help but skip a beat. Emperor Zhouwen actually hates the Empress so much that he's so guarded against her. A guard saw Situ Xingshan and immediately went forward. Eldest Princess Situ, please stop. His Majesty has ordered that nobody is allowed to come close. Situ Xingshan took out a token from her sleeves and put on the dignified posture of an eldest princess. I'm here on orders. That guard took a look and recognized that it was indeed His Majesty's token. He hurriedly moved aside. Eldest Princess Situ, please. Situ Xingshan put away the token and calmly walked into the Empress's palace. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from iYuan. Chapter 384. The huge palace was cold and cheerless. Situ Xingshan slowly walked in, and her footsteps echoed in the empty room, making it sound eerie. The floor was filled with all sorts of smashed items, and it was a mess. Situ Xingshan walked around expressionlessly and went straight in. Finally, she saw the Empress in the innermost part of the room. The Empress was wearing a messy and dirty palace gown, and it looked like she hadn't changed for a few days. She could even vaguely see some dark red bloodstains. Her face was very pale, her lips were dry, and her eyes were dull. She was curled up into a ball at the corner of the bed, motionless. When one looked over, one would think that the Empress was dead. It was obvious that the Empress had gone through a lot of torture in these few days. Situ Xingqian walked over step by step and finally stood in front of the Empress's bed. Her usual gentle smile surfaced on her face. "Her Majesty, I'm here to see you." The Empress didn't seem to hear her and didn't react at all. Situ Xingqian didn't care as she bent down slightly and went closer. But the next moment, she smelled the Empress's horrible and suffocating smell. Disgust flashed across her eyes as she took out a letter from her sleeve and handed it over. "Her Majesty, the Crown Prince asked me to come and see you today. This is the letter he wrote for you. Take a look at it." After saying that, he calmly straightened his body. If she could, she really wanted to leave this dirty place immediately, but she didn't forget her purpose for coming today. It wasn't easy to come in, so she had to grab the chance. Hearing the words Crown Prince, the Empress's eyes turned sluggishly before she finally regained some consciousness. She slowly raised her head, and her deeply sunken eyes were filled with blood vessels. They were filled with despair and anger, and there was even a hint of madness vaguely. Situ Xingqian instinctively took half a step back. The Empress's appearance is really too scary. The Empress suddenly let out a vague chuckle as if she was mocking Situ Xingqian, but it also seemed like she was mocking herself. Even without looking in the mirror, she knew what she looked like now. "How did you come in?" asked the Empress with a hoarse voice. It was as if something had been dragged across the sand, and it was so abrasive that it hurt one's eardrums. Situ Xingqian calmed herself down and softly explained. "His Highness lent me his command medallion. As the Crown Prince, Rong Jin had a token that was similar to Emperor Jiaowen's. He changed the token a little, and it looked 90% similar. Apart from the people who often saw these two tokens, no one else could tell them apart at a glance. This was why Situ Xingqian could enter so smoothly. Only then did the Empress believe him and pick up the letter. But after reading 2 lines, she suddenly crumpled the letter into a ball and harshly threw it at Situ Xingqian's face. "Bitch! You are indeed insidious." Situ Xingqian did not expect the Empress to suddenly flare up, so she was momentarily stunned. The paper ball didn't hurt when it hit her face, but it was a great humiliation to her. She picked up the ball of paper, and the smile on her face faded. "Your Majesty, what are you doing? I was kind enough to help you and the Crown Prince, but you treat me like this? Bitch! Do you think this consort doesn't know what you're thinking?" The Empress's face flushed red as she pointed at Situ Xingqian's nose and scolded her. "Rong Jin can't tell what you're thinking, but do you think I can't tell? No wonder you haven't cancelled the marriage agreement until now. It's because you want to persuade him to get this information from me. I'm telling you, don't even think about it. Even though I'm down and about to be executed anytime, it doesn't mean that I'm dumb. Previously, when I saw Situ Xingqian, I already felt that this woman's thoughts weren't pure and that she wasn't what she looked like on the surface. It seems like this is indeed the case." The smile on Situ Xingqian's face completely disappeared as she tightly clenched the paper ball in her hands. That was Rong Jin's handwritten letter, and he wrote it under her hints. Of course, she knew what was written on it. The general idea was that Rong Jin couldn't go out because he was under house arrest, so he asked Situ Xingqian to visit the Empress on his behalf. He also asked the Empress to tell Situ Xingqian the secret of Heptagon Alley so that she could relay it to him. Rong Jin felt that he could only think of a solution to solve his current predicament if he knew what was going on. When the Empress saw this, how could she not understand? Situ Xingqian originally had nothing to do with this matter, but she was now busy. How could she not have any ulterior motives? "Her Majesty, you must have misunderstood. I don't have such intentions. The Crown Prince is your biological son. If you don't even trust him, won't this situation be unsolvable? Get lost," yelled the Empress hysterically. "If it weren't for the fact that half of my body couldn't move, I would have directly gone forward and hit this B****. Situ Xingqian's gaze landed on the Empress's legs, and she vaguely guessed something as she said with disappointment, "I thought you loved the Crown Prince the most." I originally thought that you doted on the crown prince the most. I didn't expect that you could bear to watch him fall into such a desperate situation. Since you insist on this, then I have no other choice." As she spoke, she really turned around and left without a care. She had just taken a few steps when she heard the Empress's voice behind her. "What did you just say?" Situ Xingqian's lips curled up slightly, and delight flashed across her eyes. But when she turned around, her expression had already returned to normal. She sighed and said, "You've been trapped in the palace for a long time. You probably don't know that His Majesty has already decided to remove the crown prince and appoint the third prince as the crown prince." The Empress was stunned. "Impossible! I know that you don't trust me, but there's no other way now that things have come to this. If you don't believe me, you can ask the people in your palace if they've all been captured by the third prince for interrogation. Can't you guess why His Majesty wants to hand this matter to the third prince?" Situ Xingqian's voice was as gentle as usual, but it was like a cold, poisonous snake slowly crawling into the Empress's heart. Her lips trembled violently, and her entire body started shaking very quickly. "No. Rongzhen is the crown prince. Rongzhen is the only crown prince." Seeing the Empress's reaction, confusion flashed across Situ Xingqian's heart. Why does she care so much about this matter? "I'm going to find His Majesty. He can't appoint someone else as the crown prince." The Empress screamed and directly fell off the bed. "Only Rongjin. It has to be Rongjin." Situ Xingqian suddenly realized something and purposely said, "The third prince is outstanding. If he's appointed as the crown prince, the public will be convinced." "What do you know?" shouted the Empress sharply with a hideous face. "Who does Rongjiu think he is? Rongjin is heaven's chosen son. Other than him, nobody else is fit to be the crown prince." Digression. The backstage reaction is really slow. Recently, we've changed to a new comment section, and everyone is still used to it. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 385. Situ Xingqian's eyes lit up. Heaven's chosen son. This is the biggest secret hidden in Rongjin. Once the words left her mouth, the Empress immediately reacted. "I still said this out loud. Furthermore, I said it in front of Situ Xingqian." Bang. Cut. The Empress was furious as she picked up the things beside her and threw them at Situ Xingqian. "You be ****. How dare you scheme against me?" She had kept this secret for many years and didn't even tell anyone about the torture she had suffered these few days. She didn't expect Situ Xingqian to find out in the end. The Empress's hand was cut by the sharp shards, and it was covered in blood. However, she couldn't feel the pain at all as her mind was filled with thoughts of how to kill Situ Xingqian in front of her. But the current her was a useless person. She couldn't even walk on her own, so how could she deal with Situ Xingqian? Situ Xingqian easily avoided her attack, but she didn't retreat. Instead, she took 2 steps forward and squatted down in front of the Empress. "Her Majesty, did you just say? Heaven's chosen son? What does that mean?" The Empress raised her hand and was about to slap her. Situ Xingqian grabbed her wrist with a smile on her face, but the corners of her eyes were filled with iciness and threat. "Since you've already said it, why don't you tell me everything?" "Don't worry, I'll definitely tell His Highness everything without leaving out a single word. I'm guessing that this is the reason why my father wants me to get engaged to His Highness, right?" The blood in the Empress's chest rumbled as she suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. "I didn't guess wrongly. Situ Xingqian is up to no good. There was also her sinister and cunning imperial father." Who the hell told you?" The Empress tried her best to break free from Situ Xingqian, but it was to no avail. In the end, she could only scream at her. "I've never told anyone about this. Even Rongjin, I only revealed a bit of information. Until now, I still don't know what it means. But how did that old fool Situ Yen find out?" Many things that had happened in the past quickly flashed before his eyes, like pearls that were finally strung together by a string. No wonder Situ Yen interacted and suggested a marriage. No wonder they liked Rongjin from the start. No wonder the engagement hasn't been annulled yet. This treacherous father and daughter pair had come for this very reason. Situ Xingxian's ears buzzed from the Empress's ruckus, and she had completely exhausted her last bit of patience. She shook off the Empress and looked down at her. "Your Majesty, there doesn't seem to be any point in talking about this now. Why don't you just say what you need to say? Only then can you protect the Crown Prince, right? Besides, if it weren't for my father and my help, you and the Crown Prince wouldn't have survived until today. Now, we can be considered to be on the same boat. Why must you persist so bitterly? Don't tell me you still want to salvage the situation by yourself, with your half-crippled body?" Situ Xingxian wasn't polite with her words. The Empress was filled with hatred. But after thinking about it for a long time, she realized that Situ Xingxian's words made sense. It wasn't a good idea to continue resisting like this. She had worked so hard and put in so much effort to get to where she was today. How could she let all her efforts go to waste? After a long silence, she finally looked up at Situ Xingxian. "If you want this consort to tell you, it's not impossible. However, you have to swear on it. If you betray Rongjin and me in the future, may lightning strike you to death." Situ Xingxian was elated. "What's so scary about swearing? As long as I know what the so-called Heaven's Chosen Son means, I have ways to solve this problem." "Okay. Situ Xingxian, swear here. Greetings, Third Prince." A voice was suddenly heard from outside the palace. Situ Xingxian was shocked and immediately looked outside. Why is Rongjio here at this time? How's Her Majesty today? This is clearly Rongjio's voice. "Your Majesty, Her Majesty is still the same as before. She stays in the palace and refuses to come out." "I'll go in and take a look." As Rongjio spoke, he walked into the palace. The guards all knew that Rongjio was sent by His Majesty to investigate the Empress, so they directly let him in. The footsteps got closer and closer. Situ Xingxian started to panic. "If Rongjio finds out that I'm here, everything will be exposed." She hurriedly leaned in front of the Empress and softly said, "Your Majesty, you know what to do. For the Crown Prince, you should know what to do." Then she immediately found a place to hide. The door was pushed open, and Rongjio's figure appeared at the entrance. Rongjio immediately saw the situation in the palace. He squinted his eyes. "Her Majesty, what's wrong with you?" Mu Qinghe brought Chu Luiwei on her sword and headed north. As they had set up a barrier, the two of them didn't attract anyone's attention as they silently left the imperial city. Seeing that they were out of the city gate, Chu Luiwei found it even stranger. "Where exactly is Mu Qinghe bringing me?" "This direction. Normally, nobody would come here because there are many mountains here, and the terrain is dangerous. More importantly, if we continue forward, we'll reach Country Yao Chen's imperial mausoleum." However, Mu Qinghe had been silent, so she couldn't ask anything. The two of them continued forward like this. When she saw the extremely steep mountain peak, Chu Luiwei finally confirmed her guess. "Mu Qinghe brought me to Country Yao Chen's imperial mausoleum." Looking down from midair, one could even clearly see the soldiers in charge of guarding the mountain peak. A faintly discernible barrier enveloped the entire mountain peak within it. Chu Luiwei was secretly shocked. "This barrier's strength is much stronger than I expected. It's as if a stage 6 warrior set it up." An idea popped up in Mu Qinghe's mind, and she finally brought Chu Luiwei to the foot of the mountain. After Chu Luiwei stood still, she suppressed the doubts in her heart and looked up. Golden Inheritance Peak. This was the highest and most dangerous mountain peak within 50 kilometers of the imperial city. Country Yao Chen's past emperors were all buried in the imperial mausoleum at the foot of this mountain peak. At first glance, it was like a sword had landed from the sky and harshly pierced into the ground. Sharp, majestic, disdainful. Chu Luiwei had never been here before. The reason why she knew about this place was because the appearance of Golden Inheritance Peak was extremely similar to the iconic sharp sword sculpture outside Tianlu Academy. Back then, she had inadvertently discovered this and had been secretly surprised for a long time. "Vice Admiral Mu, why did you bring me here?" Chu Luiyue turned to look at Mu Qinghe. However, Mu Qinghe's expression was a little secretive. He stared at Golden Inheritance Peak for a long time before speaking in a deep voice. Enter the Imperial Mausoleum. Digression, I'm going to eat noodles. It's so tiring. Let's talk about losing weight tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 386. Chu Luiyue thought that he had heard wrongly. What? Mu Qinghe lifted his chin. I'll open the barrier later. It won't attract anyone's attention. You can just follow me in. Chu Luiyue was dumbfounded. After all this time, Mu Qinghe was really going to enter the Imperial Mausoleum. Vice Admiral Mu, this isn't very appropriate, right? We're not from country Yao Chen's royal family. How can we casually enter a place like the Imperial Mausoleum? The problem wasn't whether it would attract anyone's attention, but that it wasn't right at all. Mu Qinghe glanced coldly at Chu Luiyue. He didn't show any anger. You don't want to go? Chu Luiyue was speechless. It's not that I don't want to go, but... Vice Admiral Mu, you have to have a reason for doing this, right? Chu Luiyue racked his brains, but he couldn't understand why Mu Qinghe would suddenly do this. Firstly, no one in country Yao Chen had offended Mu Qinghe, so there was no need for him to dig up their ancestral graves. Secondly, even if there were any treasures hidden in the Imperial Mausoleum, Mu Qinghe wouldn't be interested in them. He had a distinguished status in the Tianling dynasty, so what kind of rare items had he not seen before? Why did he have to barge into a mere Imperial Mausoleum in country Yao Chen? Mu Qinghe narrowed his eyes, and the scar on his face revealed a hint of fierceness. Chu Luiyue immediately felt a chill in his heart, so he obediently changed his tone. Please go ahead. With her current status, wouldn't she be looking for trouble if she asked Mu Qinghe for a reason? Since she was already here, she might as well go in with Mu Qinghe and see what he wanted to do. Seeing that Chu Luiyue was finally obedient, Mu Qinghe retracted his gaze. He raised his right hand, and several silver rays quickly gathered, finally condensing into a strange pattern in his palm. Chu Luiyue quickly glanced at it and found that the pattern was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. But soon, Mu Qinghe pushed her hand forward, and the silver pattern immediately flew out. Buzz. A faint buzzing sound could be heard. Ripples suddenly appeared in the void in front of him. It was the barrier that enveloped the entire Golden Inheritance Peak. The moment the silver pattern touched the ripples on the barrier, the buzzing sound suddenly disappeared, and even the ripples were instantly frozen. In the next moment, the silver pattern quickly melted and silently seeped into the barrier. A crack immediately appeared in the middle of the frozen enchantment, and then it spread in all directions. Finally, a round entrance with a faint silver glow appeared in front of the two of them. Chu Luiyue was slightly shocked. The Golden Inheritance Peak's barrier was not of a low grade, and its defensive power was also very strong. It was impossible to break through it so smoothly using ordinary methods. Generally speaking, only a specific item that was compatible with the barrier could open it completely without causing any ripples. Mu Qinghe obviously did not possess the key to country Yao Chen's Imperial Mausoleum's barrier, but the scene before her eyes, Chu Luiyue suddenly recalled that when she went to look for Mu Qinghe a few days ago, he was not at home. She did not pay much attention to it at that time, but now that she thought about it, she felt that it was a little strange. It was obviously not Mu Qinghe's first time here. It could be seen that he had put in a lot of effort in order to enter the Imperial Mausoleum. Chu Luiyue's mind raced, but her face was calm. Mu Qinghe turned around and glanced at her with a hint of scrutiny in his eyes. After a moment, he turned around and walked forward. Follow me. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and looked up at the steep mountain peak again, as well as the faintly discernible barrier. There were at least 100 guards guarding Golden Inheritance Peak, and there were definitely experts overseeing it. But now that the barrier had been opened, they probably did not notice anything. She suppressed her thoughts and stepped over the barrier. Palace, Empress's bedroom. Faced with Rongjio's question, the Empress lowered her head and did not say a word. Rongjio was not surprised by her reaction. In actual fact, even though he did not personally interrogate the Empress during these few days, it did not mean that he did not know anything. Ever since they returned from Heptagon Alley, the Empress had been like this. It seemed like she had gone crazy again. Rongjio was too lazy to waste time and directly asked her, "Her Majesty, I heard that you have an extremely precious box?" Once this was said, the Empress seemed to be greatly agitated as she suddenly looked up. "What box? I don't have it. I don't know." Rongjio lightly said, "The people around you have already spilled the beans, yet you're still unwilling to admit it?" The Empress was stunned and instantly guessed a little. She had always kept that item very carefully. After so many years, it was only broken by a eunuch once. Even though that eunuch only glanced at it unintentionally and did not know anything, the Empress still killed him. She originally thought that it was foolproof, but she did not expect there to be a loophole. That eunuch must have told the others before he died. Rongjio had captured all the people in the palace and interrogated them these few days. I don't know what ruthless methods he used, but he actually managed to get this out. Seeing the Empress's resistance and that she still wanted to deny it, Rongjio straightforwardly said, "Father already knows. He told me to tell you this. He told me to tell you that if you hand over the box obediently, everything will be fine. But if you're unwilling, I'm afraid you can't bear the consequences." The Empress was filled with hatred. "I should have gotten someone to kill you in the Northwest Army back then." Back then, she killed Rongjio's birth mother and originally wanted to kill Rongjio. However, she coincidentally met with Consort Wan's death, and Emperor Joan was in deep sorrow. Hence, she could not do anything, so she did not do anything. Who knew that Rongjio would rather go to the Northwest Army and train himself thousands of miles away? She thought that it was tough at the borders and that it was hard to predict life and death on the battlefield. Perhaps Rongjio would die there very quickly, so she gradually let go of this matter. Later on, when Rongjio had outstanding military achievements and rose up the ranks, it was very difficult for her to take action. Now, Rongjio was clearly here to take revenge on her. Rongjio did not care about the Empress's complaints. "It seems like you're unwilling to hand over the item. I'll report to Father now." Then he really turned around and left. The Empress was dazed. She originally thought that Rongjio would interrogate her strictly, but she did not expect him to let her off so easily. Actually, Rongjio had other thoughts in his heart. The Empress had held on for so long, but she did not say anything. It was obvious that she was prepared to die. Even if he interrogated the Empress here for an entire day and tortured her until she was half dead, it would be very difficult for him to get anything out of her. The Empress only had one weakness, Rongjin. "Oh right. After I go back, I'll ask Father to give you a way out and let Brother come and see you. We're mother and son, so I believe Father won't be so heartless. Let them see each other's current appearance." That scene would definitely be very exciting. Before the Empress could react, a soft sound came from behind the screen at the side. Rongjio paused in his footsteps and turned around with a knife-like gaze. "Who's there?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 387. Nobody responded. Rongjio knitted his brows and stared at that spot for quite a while before suddenly turning around and walking toward the screen. The Empress has been locked up here alone for the past few days, and the outside is heavily guarded. It's impossible for anyone else to enter. The sound of footsteps resounded in the empty and deathly silent hall, almost suffocating everyone. Just as Rongjio was about to walk over, a macaw suddenly flew out. Rongjio immediately took action. A force turned into a sharp arrow, and it directly pierced through the macaw's stomach. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. That macaw immediately landed on the floor, and its body suddenly twitched twice before it stopped moving. Rongjio knitted his brows. He recognized this macaw as the Empress's pet. He didn't expect such a thing to be left in this palace. Suddenly, Rongjio focused his gaze and saw something hidden in the macaw's broken stomach. He immediately bent over and took a closer look. Then, he took out the item hidden inside. It was a black ball. This item was only the size of a fingernail and looked very normal. However, Rong Jio's expression became increasingly stern. This was because he recognized this black ball. This item was also known as an ink pearl. It looked like a normal black ball, but it could actually be used to transmit information. As long as one used a special method to decode it, one could obtain the information hidden inside. When he was in the military previously, he had also used such a method. However, this item was very rare, and each ink pearl could only be used once, so he didn't use it many times. He didn't expect this to be hidden in the Empress's macaw's stomach. It was obvious what she wanted. He looked at the Empress and indeed saw her pale face as if she was in complete despair. I didn't expect Her Majesty to have such methods. Don't worry, I'll pass this ink pearl to Father for him to take a closer look. Then, Rong Jio didn't stay any longer and quickly left the palace. After a long while, the Empress slowly covered her face. She had no more tears, only excruciating pain. After an unknown period of time, a gentle voice whispered into his ear. Her Majesty, Xing Qin is willing to help you. If you have any requests, just let me know. Princely Mansion. Rong Xiu looked at the sky and narrowed his eyes. In the past few days, Yu would come to Prince Li's residence at this time every time. But today, for some unknown reason, she was late. Yuemo, who was serving at the side, seemed to have guessed what he was thinking. Master, Miss Lu Yu went to Vice Admiral Mu's place today. She must have been delayed by something. What can he have? Rong Xiu said indifferently, then suddenly paused. Is Mu Qinghe in the residence today? Yuemo was stunned. I don't know either. Mu Qinghe was not an ordinary person. It was very difficult to monitor him. In the past few days, he seemed to be more alert than before. Yuemo was worried that he would alert the enemy, so he withdrew most of the people who were secretly monitoring him. Rong Xiu's expression turned cold. He suddenly stood up. Find out where Mu Qinghe is right now. Yes. When Yuemo heard Rong Xiu's words, he suddenly reacted. Could it be that Master suspected that Mu Qinghe took Miss Lu Yu away? Master, we have people at the Imperial City Gate. If there is any movement, they should send a message. If Mu Qinghe doesn't want them to know, he naturally has a way. Rong Xiu's voice was cold, and there seemed to be a trace of coldness between his eyebrows. Yumo's heart trembled. I know I was wrong. Before he could finish his words, Rong Xiu, who had just taken 2 steps, suddenly stopped and looked up at the sky. Yuemo looked up in puzzlement, but he saw a tall figure approaching quickly. He was flying in the sky. His movements seemed slow and relaxed, but his speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he was already above Prince Li's residence. Yuemo was about to go forward, but he saw Rong Xiu pressing his hand down. Only then did he restrain himself, but his eyes were still fixed on the approaching person. Almost at the same time, the approaching person also stopped. Jian Fengqi raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly and looked down with surprise. He originally thought that Prince Li's residence was just an ordinary house, but after coming here he found that the internal and external defense here was much stronger than expected. Ordinary people would not be able to see anything from the outside. But with his eyesight he had just approached and felt an unusual aura. So he simply gave up on visiting from the front door and chose another more direct way. After looking in the sky for a while, he finally confirmed his guess. In this huge Prince Li's residence, in addition to the tight defense, there was actually an extremely powerful Xian formation. He was very clear that if he continued to move forward, there would be a lot of trouble waiting for him. Jian Fengqi had always hated trouble, so he very consciously stopped. Anyway, he came today just to see what the rumored Rong Xiu looked like. So he stood in the air, one hand behind his back, and said with a smile, "This one is Jian Fengqi, and I'm here to pay a visit to Prince Li." Yumo's whole body tensed up. Jian Fengqi? Wasn't that the celestial physician that Mu Qinghe invited from the Tianling dynasty? The news that he had cured the princess consort of Pingjiang some time ago had spread like wildfire in the imperial capital. Many people tried to find ways to meet him, But this Jian Fengqi was very arrogant and refused all of them, not even meeting a single one. After all, it was normal for a celestial physician with such a background to be arrogant. But what was even more amazing was that he could be said to be elusive. Many people waited day and night, but still could not catch a glimpse of him. Why did such a person suddenly come to Prince Li's residence today? And he even said that he wanted to meet the master? Jian Fengqi's eyes suddenly focused as soon as he finished speaking. A young man in white stood in the middle of the courtyard. He looked to be about 17 or 18 years old, and his snow-white clothes seemed to be even whiter than the snow in the mountains. Just by standing there, he seemed to have gathered all the light, making people involuntarily focus their attention on him. His appearance was noble and unparalleled, and his charm was unparalleled. Jian Fengqi believed that his appearance and temperament were top-notch, but when he saw the appearance of this young man in white, he instantly understood what it meant to feel inferior. In an instant, he understood Mu Hongyu's words. Not to mention country Yaochen, even in the Tianling dynasty, this young man's charm was almost unparalleled. Even Jiang Yuqing's thing was instantly at a disadvantage. Rong Xiu's voice was cold as he said indifferently, "May I know why young Master Jian is looking for me?" Jian Fengqi suddenly narrowed his eyes. "Your Highness, have we met somewhere before?" Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 388. Jian Fengqi didn't know why he had this thought. He was sure that he had never seen Rong Xiu's face before, but when Rong Xiu spoke, that noble, calm, and somewhat languid appearance suddenly felt somewhat familiar. That was why he blurted out that question. A warm and distant smile appeared on Rong Xiu's face. "Why do you say that, young Master Jian?" "I've been recuperating at Mingyue Tianshan and have only returned to the imperial capital in the past few months. I've been living in seclusion. I don't remember seeing young Master Jian before." Hearing this, Jian Fengqi was a little hesitant. Was it really just an illusion? But he had never had such a feeling before. No matter who it was, he had a photographic memory and clearly remembered all the details of the other party. No, there was another person who made him have a similar feeling before. Chu Luiwei. However, Chu Luiwei at least had eyes that were extremely similar to that person's, so it was normal for him to feel familiar. Didn't even Mu Qinghe think so? Even Hong Yao treated Chu Luiwei differently. But Rong Xiu wasn't. This face was clearly unfamiliar to him. But that aura, it seems that I remembered wrongly. But it seems that I have quite the affinity with Prince Li. As Jian Fengqi spoke, he secretly sighed in his heart. There was such a person in the imperial capital, but he didn't notice it at all before. It wasn't just him. Obviously, even the people in country Yaochen thought that Rong Xiu was just a sickly person who couldn't even leave the residence. His Highness Prince Li was really good at hiding his strength. I came here today for no other reason than to hear Mu Hongyu mention it unintentionally. I was curious, so I specially came to meet him. Also, I want to see what kind of person Chu Liyue's fiancé is. Jian Fengqi's words were too straightforward and even seemed a bit provocative. But according to his status, there seemed to be nothing wrong with what he said. After all, even Emperor Zhouwen had to be polite to him. When Rong Xiu heard him mention Chu Luiwei, his eyes flickered. "You went to Vice Admiral Mu's place today. If young Master Jian wishes to see this prince, you can just inform him. This prince will specially invite young Master Jian to be a distinguished guest." Now that they were here, Prince Li's mansion might not be able to entertain them well. Jian Fengqi laughed. This young master has never liked to trouble others. I'll just take care of this small matter myself. Besides, she might not have the time today. Rong Xiu had a thought. Jian Fengqi suddenly realized something and looked at Rong Xiu with a serious expression. Shortly after, the smile at the corner of his mouth deepened and was tainted with a trace of evil. "So Prince Li is trying to get information from me?" Rong Xiu's expression didn't change. Jian Fengqi was a smart person, and some superficial skills couldn't be hidden from his eyes. Hence, there was no need for him to pretend. Young Master Jian, please tell me where you is now. Rong Jiao returned to the imperial study and presented the ink pearl to Emperor Juan. Emperor Juan held the ink pearl and looked at it for a while before he knitted his brows. Do you know how to break this thing? Rong Jiao paused and said, there are two types of ink pearls. There are two ways to break the ink pearl. However, I've already tried it before and it didn't work. It was obvious that the Empress's shocking secret was hidden inside. Once it was broken, the Empress's side would most likely collapse. However, he quickly realized that this ink pearl was different from normal ink pearls. With his own abilities, he couldn't break the contents at all. There seems to be a special seal on this ink pearl, but I'm useless and can't recognize it. Emperor Jiawen stared at the ink pearl and fell into deep thought. If even you can't do it? I'm afraid it's a little troublesome. Rong Jiao had many years of experience in the military, so he should be the best at dealing with such things. However, even he couldn't do anything about it, let alone the others. Looking at Emperor Jiawen's troubled look, Rong Jiao thought for a while and said, Tian Lu is an expert from the Imperial Study Academy. Tian Lu Academy's dean, Elder Yi, is very knowledgeable. Emperor Jiawen paused and shook his head. This is a serious matter, so it's better to be careful. You also have to be careful on your side and not leak any information. Doubts flashed across Rong Jiao's heart. This matter involves the Empress and the Crown Prince, so it's right for father to be careful. But isn't he being too careful? What kind of person is Elder Yi? Yet, father doesn't even want to tell him. It's as if he's afraid of something. However, Rong Jiao was a smart person. Since he could tell what Emperor Jiawen was thinking, he would naturally go along with it. You can leave first. Emperor Jiawen put away the ink pearl, leaned against the chair, and waved his hands tiredly. Rong Jiao wanted to say something but stopped himself. He wanted to take the ink pearl back and study it in detail, but he swallowed his words in the end. I'll take my leave. After leaving the palace, Rong Jiao was still thinking about the ink pearl. Father seems to value that item a lot, but if he can't crack it himself, isn't it useless? Father have other thoughts? The more Rong Jiao thought about it, the more uncomfortable he felt. Ever since Heptagon Alley, father's reaction has been very strange. He seemed to know something, but he kept it a secret and only told them to investigate the Empress. Now that the ink pearl incident was out, it was even more obvious. Rong Jiao was walking when he suddenly felt that someone was walking toward him. He couldn't help but look up. The person was a slender woman, but most of her face was covered by a white veil. Rong Jiao secretly knitted his brows. It's actually Chu Xianmin? She's here to find me? As expected, Chu Xianmin stopped when she was 3 steps away from him and curtsied. Greetings, third prince. Chu Xianmin? What are you doing here? Even though Rong Jiao wasn't very familiar with Chu Xianmin, he had heard quite a bit of news about her when he returned to the imperial city. She was Rong Jin's concubine. Xianmin has something to discuss with the third prince. Rong Jiao knitted his brows. What can Chu Xianmin say to me? Could it be, if you're here to plead for the crown prince, you can go back now? Chu Xianmin lightly shook her head. Third prince, you're mistaken. Even though I'm the crown prince's subordinate, I know the severity of the situation. I'm here today because I have something to tell you. I've been conflicted about this for a long time, but after thinking about it, I still think it's better to tell you. The feeling in Rong Jiao's heart grew stronger. But I have a request. Please don't let anyone know that I'm the one who told you this. Chu Xianmin tightly gripped the handkerchief in her hands as if she was very nervous and worried. Rong Jiao said, Okay, just say it. Chu Xianmin hesitated for a moment before she lowered her voice and said, Previously, I heard the crown prince discussing with eldest princess Situ. He said that he wanted her help to find a way to enter the palace and meet the empress. It should be within these 2 days. Rong Jiao's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly remembered the strange sound he heard in the empress's palace. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Ayun. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.